Chapter 580. Is there still a need to compete? Lu said indifferently, but she was extremely arrogant in her bones. In the alchemy competition, he invited a low-level earth-grade alchemist, and in the martial art competition, he even invited the monster Xianyuan Ziguang. He himself majored in formations and had already become a 6th-tier formation master. No matter what, he should have a complete victory in this competition, adding an incomparably glorious stroke to his resume. Why not compete? Yin Heng crossed her arms, completely showing off her majestic figure, as if complaining that others didn't know her breasts were big. Who knows, that alchemist of yours might fail miserably in a simple task. That's right, alchemy is a meticulous work. One careless mistake and you might lose everything. Clan brother Lu is too complacent, Yin Hao said angrily. Then compete. Under the supervision of the clan's elders, the alchemy competition officially began. Actually, each family could send 3 alchemists to take the field and choose the one with the best results. Yin Lu was full of confidence, and only sent Xian Ji Yun, while Yin Heng obviously trusted Ling Han even more, and only sent one person as well. The other 3 clans used up all 3 slots, for fear of failure and added insurance. Furnace explosion during alchemy was an extremely common thing. Even heaven-grade alchemists like Kang Zishir and Nong Bo Xian couldn't guarantee a 100% success rate, let alone others. There was only one chance in the alchemy competition, and if the furnace exploded, it was over. First, choose the medicinal ingredients and determine what medicinal pill to refine. This involved a very deep game. As mentioned before, no alchemist dared to pat their chest and say that they would definitely succeed in refining pills. The difference was that refining low-level medicinal pills was infinitely close to a 100% success rate, and the higher the medicinal pill's grade, the closer it was to their own alchemy level, so the failure rate would skyrocket. Normally, when a low-level earth-grade alchemist refined a low-level earth-grade medicinal pill, the success rate was only about 30%, which was equivalent to refining 3 furnaces of medicinal pills, and only 1 furnace could succeed. Therefore, if Xian Ji Yun chose to refine a low-grade earth-grade medicinal pill and succeeded, then the other alchemists would naturally be willing to admit defeat. But what if he failed? One should know that the probability of failure was as high as 60%. Once he failed, then it was nothing. Therefore, choosing the pill to refine wasn't just about one's own pill Dao level, but also how the opponent chose it. For a moment, though the 10 alchemists were pacing back and forth in front of the medicine cabinets, and their medicine baskets were filled with many ingredients, whether they were actually concocting this kind of alchemical pill or whether it was just a smokescreen, only they themselves knew. This was a battle of wits and courage. Only Ling Han didn't care at all. He directly chose the materials he wanted to refine. Unfortunately, there was not a single stock of heaven-level material in the medicine cabinet. True, heaven-grade ingredients were too precious, so how could they possibly be taken out? Everyone knew that there were only 3 heaven-grade alchemists in the whole world now, and if the Spirit Treasures Pavilion took out heaven-grade medicinal ingredients now, other than wasting them, what other use would it have? They're businessmen, not idiots. Forget it, then let's refine a high-grade earth-grade one. Ling Han chose casually, not bothering to pay attention to others at all. Alchemy was just a formality for him. His goal was the martial arts tournament 6 days later, a showdown with Xianyuan Ziguang to see who was the strongest among the younger generation. He returned to his position and immediately opened the furnace to refine. His figure moved, slapping palm after palm at the pill furnace. Flames rolled, and one after another, symbols shone brightly. This was drawing upon the essence of heaven and earth in the materials, perfectly interweaving the medicinal power. Phew, unbelievable, this guy's technique is too experienced, could there really be hope of forming a pill? From the looks of it, everything is going smoothly. Hiss, there's going to be another alchemy genius in the world, already a high-level earth-grade alchemist in his 20s, then it's very possible that he'll advance into the ranks of heaven-grade in the future. Don't forget, this guy's talent in martial art isn't bad either. A freak. Ling Han was unmoved, and only focused on concocting the pill. After half a day, there were multiple wisps of dense qi floating above the alchemy furnace, which turned into the shapes of mountains and rivers, birds and beasts, which was incredibly wonderful. The pill is about to form. Everyone exclaimed. Xian Ji-yun and the other alchemists were even more shocked by Ling Han. The difference of one level in alchemy was like the difference of a large tier in martial art. That was an absolute gap, not to mention that a high-level earth-grade alchemist was almost standing at the peak of alchemy, making them want to prostrate themselves in worship. Chapter 581. One day later, the 5 turns black jade pill was refined. Fortunately, this was only an earth-grade high-level medicinal pill, and it wouldn't attract a pill tribulation. However, because the quality was too high, it still triggered a response from heaven and earth. Thunder clouds rolled over, but there was no lightning. Ling Han slapped the lid of the cauldron forcefully. 2, 2, 2. 3 round alchemical pills flew out of the cauldron as if they had grown wings and were about to escape. From earth-grade medicinal pills were already psychic, and heaven-grade medicinal pills were more likely to take shape. Ordinary people couldn't see through that disguise at all. He casually tossed it, and said, "Examine the pills." Examining the quality of a finished pill was naturally a trivial matter for the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, which was what they did. Immediately, 3 appraisers came on stage, examined carefully, and soon came to a conclusion. The 3 medicinal pills all reached 10-star quality, which could be said to be perfect. This was still Ling Han holding back, or else it wouldn't be a problem to reach 13-star or 14-star. First, well-deserved. Xian Ji-yun and the others didn't choose materials anymore. What was there to refine? They all came over to worship Ling Han. Although this wasn't a heaven-grade alchemist, being able to refine 10-star quality earth-grade high-level alchemist, how far was he from that sacred door? In front of such a future grandmaster, how could they have the courage to show their incompetence? No one thought that the alchemy competition would have such a result. Other than the North region obtaining 30 points, the other 4 branches didn't even get a single point. Then, as long as the North region obtained another 40 points in the next 2 competitions, they could secure first place, or at least tie for first place. Ling Han put away the 5 turns black jade pill, which belonged to the alchemist after being refined. It was clearly stated before. This was also why these alchemists were willing to come over. Using other people's materials to refine pills, the refined pills were their own, it was worth it. Especially earth-grade materials, which were ridiculously expensive. He went straight back and entered the Black Tower again, continuing to study 10,000 techniques returned to one and bone text. The alchemy competition was 3 days, the formation competition was also 3 days, and finally the martial art competition. Therefore, Ling Han still had 5 days, and he was confident that he could attach the bone text to the false ray. He cultivated diligently, and 5 days later, he appeared from the Black Tower. Ling Han, you're bad. Hu Niu was greatly displeased. He hadn't played with the cute and beautiful Niu for a whole 5 days. Henin is bad. Helian Xuanxue also followed up, pouting her cherry lips so high that it made people want to kiss them. Ba, how could I have such a thought of being struck by lightning? What a sin. Ling Han shuddered and asked, how was the formation path competition? Sister Hong only got 3rd place, getting 10 points, Zhu Xian said from the side. Ling Han nodded very casually. He naturally did not care what ranking Hong could get in the end, but since he had participated in the competition, with his personality, he would naturally strive to win with all his might. Xianyuan Ziguang, it was time for a battle to determine who was superior. Ling Han's fighting spirit was like fire. Xianyuan Ziguang was a young prodigy with real weight, perhaps not losing to the Sword Emperor and the others in his youth. In the previous life, although Ling Han stood at the peak of martial art, he could never be called an elite. In this life, he would step on all prodigies and ascend to the throne of the strongest. They set off and arrived at a massive training field. Xianyuan Ziguang, Pang Xiangming, and other young prodigies all appeared. There were a few that Ling Han didn't recognize, but they all emitted a shocking presence, worthy of being called a young king. Brother Pang. Ling Han greeted Pang Xiangming. Although the other was a bit effeminate, his personality was still quite straightforward, giving him a good impression. Brother Han. Pang Xiangming didn't dare to put on airs, returning a salute to Ling Han with cupped fists. However, cupping fists was fine, but he raised his thumb and middle finger, appearing very effeminate. Although Ling Han was also in the flower blossom tier like him, he already heard that Ling Han concocted a high-level earth-grade medicinal pill a few days ago. Then, wouldn't he be a high-level earth-grade alchemist? He could be on equal footing with deity transformation tier elites. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, Brother Pang, after the competition, let's drink together. Of course, of course. Pang Xiangming nodded hurriedly, looking like a flowering branch, making Ling Han somewhat unable to bear it. Did this guy reincarnate into the wrong body? Get ready to begin, Yin Shuiyang said. The competition uses a ring system. The first place of the previous competition will be the first to defend the ring, and the other 4 clans will each send someone to attack the ring. The winner will defend the ring. Whichever clan can defend the ring until the end will be the first place of this competition. The first place of the previous competition was the Middle States headquarters, so a young woman walked into the center of the field and directly flew into the sky, waiting for the challenge. Each clan could send 3 people to battle, so they obviously had to determine the vanguard and general candidates. No one would play their strongest card first. The second place of the previous competition was the first to attack the ring. A tall man walked out, and the battle immediately began. Soon, the battle was decided, ending with the successful attack on the ring. Next, the South region attacked the ring. Ling Han yawned in boredom. The North region's branch could be said to have a strong army this time, with 3 super experts, Ling Han, Hun Yo, and Helian Sun Shui. Ling Han was afraid that the 2 girls would be too fierce and directly beat Xianyuan Ziguang down, so he asked for the vanguard position and soon entered the field. With his strength, how could the opponent be his match if they didn't use their general's trump card? Soon, he won 8 matches in a row, forcing the generals of the other 4 clans to come out. Han Lin, I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. Xianyuan Ziguang entered the field, his imposing manner as if he was the son of a god. This time, I'll trample you under my feet and let you truly taste the taste of defeat. It sounds better than a song. Ling Han picked his ear. Now I'm really starting to doubt whether you're a martial artist or a drama actor. Xianyuan Ziguang was furious. You're the one with the glib tongue, not giving up until you anger people to death, and you actually had the nerve to say that in a battle between geniuses, psychological attacks were also an important part. He immediately suppressed his anger, not wanting to lose control at this time and give Ling Han a chance to take advantage of. Elites speak with their fists, he said coldly. Then why are you blabbering so much nonsense? Ling Han sneered. Why aren't you attacking? Xianyuan Ziguang stared at Ling Han, killing intent rising in his gaze, and said, For Lord Feng's sake, I'll be merciful and not beat you too badly. Ha! Ling Han shrugged and directly attacked. Don't think too highly of yourself. 6th layer of the flower blossom tier. Xianyuan Ziguang snorted. After not seeing each other for a few days, Ling Han's cultivation actually improved so quickly, shocking even him. However, he obviously wouldn't be afraid. He was confident that he could kill anyone in the same tier, not to mention that he had the advantage in tier. Kill! He raised his palms and welcomed Ling Han's attack. The 2 young king tiers finally clashed again, and this time, no one would stop them. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 582. Ling Han's fists moved, and he struck out with the war elephant fist. Shockingly, there were 21 dragons and elephants roaring. This battle was bound to take a long time, so Ling Han wasn't in a hurry to succeed, and used his fiercest sword art. Xianyuan Ziguang was also very calm. Every palm and move conformed to the norm, neither hurried nor impatient, showing his excellent martial art cultivation. Just from this battle alone, everyone thought they were old friends, and now they were just exchanging pointers, without the slightest bit of anger. However, the two parties involved knew that they were testing each other. Although they'd fought twice before, they'd only exchanged a few simple moves, and neither side had used their trump cards. As they fought, both of their tempers flared up, and their attacks became swift and fierce. Xianyuan Ziguang's palm was like a heavy axe, and when it chopped down, it could even collapse a mountain. The vein-like patterns weaved densely, and the will of martial art vibrated, already starting to show its might. When he struck out with his palm, 22 flashes of qi danced, its power astonishing. Ling Han wasn't outdone. Although his attainments in fist art weren't as good as his sword art, he'd also advanced into the level of 20 flashes of qi. And although he was slightly weaker in terms of cultivation level, adding the brute force brought by the 9 dragons' tyrant body art, his power actually didn't lose out at all. Hung, hung, hung. The two of them kept exchanging blows, without any fancy tricks. What they were competing in was power and comprehension of martial art, which was the quantity and quality of qi. This was the clash of blades, whoever was slightly weaker could only swallow the bitter fruit of defeat. But the two of them were worthy of being geniuses of the present age, and actually fought to a draw. These two are so strong. In the younger generation, how many can stand shoulder to shoulder with them? Only Yao Huiyi, Lang Yutian, Dong Ling, and a few others. The youngsters of this generation are really too strong, catching up to those geniuses in their prime. The martial art had entered a glorious golden age, and in Ling Han's generation, it was extremely dazzling. Geniuses seemed to have been knocked over and appeared like a spring. You're still not fit to be on par with me, Xianyuan Ziguang said coldly, and struck out with his palm again, yet only a fire tiger surged out. It was as large as a mountain, and emitted a shocking aura. He combined the 22 streams of qi into one and shot it out, which had a power close to that of radiance. Ling Han laughed and said, "I forgot to thank you for teaching me this move." He also punched out, and a pale golden dragon elephant appeared, also as huge as a mountain. Upon closer inspection, regardless of whether it was the fire tiger or the dragon elephant, their bodies were all densely woven with vein-like patterns, emitting an astonishing divine light. Bam! The fire tiger and dragon elephant collided, bursting forth with a blazing light. This was the collision of martial arts willpower, turning into a divine sense shock wave that made many flower blossom tier cultivators shiver, their minds wavering under the two's martial arts willpower. The dragon elephant was even more ferocious, and with a roll of its long trunk, it actually rolled up the fire tiger and threw it away, charging towards Xianyuan Ziguang again. How is this possible? Xianyuan Ziguang cried out in shock. They both combined qi, and he had 22 flashes. He obviously had the advantage in quantity, so why was he still inferior to Ling Han? Could it be that in terms of qi quality, he was actually weaker than Ling Han? This was something he couldn't accept. He struck out with another palm, and only then did he dissolve Ling Han's attack. He couldn't help but look troubled. This result was too out of his expectations. That's not right. Xianyuan Ziguang immediately discovered that the opponent's dragon elephant was entwined with an extremely special vein-like pattern, like a divine light wrapping around it. It was precisely that vein-like pattern that greatly increased the dragon elephant's battle prowess. Figuring this out, he instantly recovered his confidence. It wasn't that he was inferior to Ling Han in terms of qi quality, but that Ling Han had grasped a secret art that could increase the power of qi. Xianyuan Ziguang, definitely won't be weaker than anyone. He was full of heroism, and once again launched a fierce attack. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "Then today I'll beat you into submission." He activated the Eye of Truth, and even the slightest of his opponent's flaws were magnified in his eyes. He rolled out, attacking fiercely without end. He had the body of Iron Sheet, and also cultivated the 9 Dragons Tyrant body art. Not only was his physique tyrannical, but his brute force was also astonishing, being most suited for close combat. If he were to be directly hit by his iron fists, and those 20 flashes of chi burst forth together, probably even a spiritual infant tier cultivator wouldn't be able to withstand it. Xianyuan Ziguang knew that he was tyrannical in close combat, so how could he fight him head-on? He hurriedly moved his feet, doing his best to pull away from him. However, under Ling Han's Eye of Truth, his flaws were continuously magnified. Every step was traceable, allowing him to target and calculate his opponent's route in advance. He continuously intercepted Xianyuan Ziguang, creating a huge threat to him. Xianyuan Ziguang roared repeatedly. He'd never fought so vexed before, and this made him almost mad with anger. "You've angered me." Xianyuan Ziguang's black hair flew into the air, and his thick brows raised. He actually drew out a long saber with a flip of his hand. He was actually a saber user. Ling Han was astonished. Xianyuan Ziguang had always been bare-handed, and he'd thought that Xianyuan Ziguang was most proficient in palm arts. "To be able to force me to use a saber, you're not bad," Xianyuan Ziguang said proudly. With a saber in hand, he immediately recovered his calm, and his arrogance soared. "What's the difference?" Ling Han said with a smile. "Experience it yourself." Xianyuan Ziguang slashed out with his saber. Hong, 29 flashes of saber chi slashed out, slashing wildly at Ling Han. 29 flashes. Ling Han's expression froze, and he hurriedly used the demon fairy step, dodging these saber chi. Not only was the amount shocking, this saber was at least a 7th-tier spirit tool, and the saber chi it shot out was extremely sharp. Even if Ling Han's physique was equivalent to 6th-tier rare metal, he still didn't dare to take it head-on. 29 flashes of saber chi. Heavens, how could there be such a freak? I always thought he used palms, but never thought he was actually a saber user, and his talent in the way of the saber is actually so terrifying. Probably even the small saber king of the absolute saber sect is inferior to him. Everyone exclaimed, shocked by Xianyuan Ziguang's strength and talent. This young man really hit it deeply. Who would have thought that his true specialty was saber arts? Ling Han decisively drew his sword. With the purple demon sword in hand, his right hand shook, and 23 flashes of saber chi flew out. Another freak. Everyone exclaimed again. Peng, 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 sword chi and saber chi continuously collided, turning into countless fragments and exploding. This time, Xianyuan Ziguang wasn't at a disadvantage. He had an absolute advantage in terms of the quantity of chi, and with the support of the treasured saber, the saber chi was even sharper, and its destructive power was even stronger. Saber slashes hell. Xianyuan Ziguang gave a long howl, and the treasured saber swept out. 29 flashes of saber chi merged into one, forming an incredibly thick and long saber ray, slashing towards Ling Han. Ling Han similarly slashed out with his sword. 23 flashes of sword chi merged into one, and with the support of bone patterns, it met the saber chi head-on. Chapter 583. In this desolate wilderness, a tea guest actually appeared, leisurely and contented. No matter how one looked at it, it was not normal. Ling Han and the others all stopped in their tracks, and walked over to that person. This was a man as gentle as jade. He looked to be about 30 years old, and was filled with the charm of a mature man. His head of black hair was scattered over his shoulders, and he looked a little wild and unrestrained. This person naturally arrived at Ling Han as well. He put down his teacup, and said, "Tea is really a good thing. It can cultivate one's character, clear one's heart, and comprehend Tao. Sir, you are sitting in the middle of the road. Are you planning to invite me to tea?" Ling Han asked with a smile, and strode over. That man took out a cup from the tea tray, filled it up, and then said, "Why not?" Ling Han pulled out a chair, sat down, and faced that man. He raised the cup, took a sniff, and said, "It is indeed good tea." That man broke into a smile, and said, "This is dragon birth tea. According to legends, it grows only after bathing in the rain of true dragons, and can only be picked once every 100 years. It is unknown whether it is the rain of true dragons, but its preciousness cannot be doubted." The fragrance of the tea overflowed in the mouth, and lingered for a long time. "Thanks." Ling Han took a sip, and could not help but relax his brows. He should also plant such good tea in the Black Tower. "Please enjoy." That man stretched out his hand, and made a gesture of invitation. Ling Han took a few sips, put down the teacup, and said, "I have not asked for your distinguished name." That man smiled faintly, and said, "I am called Corpse Boss." Ling Han almost sprayed out a mouthful of tea. He thought of many possibilities, but just didn't connect this man with the Thousand Corpse sect. Whether it was Rong Huan Xian, Corpse 2, or the Ninth Underworld King, they all carried corpse chi, but this cultured and refined man in front of him was like a well-read scholar, and it was really impossible to connect him with the Thousand Corpse sect. According to Corpse 2, Corpse Boss was even more perfect than him. This was truly perfect to the point that it didn't seem like a corpse reincarnating at all. That Corpse 2 could still feel the marks left behind by old age, but he truly cast off the old skin of his old body, and obtained a new life. Truly unexpected. Ling Han said sincerely. Hearing the name Corpse Boss, no matter how one thought about it, this person should be scowling in anger and seething with killing intent, and was truly too different from this man in front of him. Corpse Boss smiled faintly, and said, "I rarely kill people, but those who are worthy of me attacking, I'll invite them to tea." "Is this considered decapitation tea?" Ling Han asked. "You can say that." Corpse Boss nodded. "We can chat before we finish drinking." "Of course." Please." Please, the two of them didn't seem like enemies at all, chatting cheerfully and wittily. Corpse Boss was very knowledgeable, and no matter what topic they talked about, he could talk tirelessly, and Ling Han wasn't inferior in any way. He lived for over 200 years in his previous life, so he naturally read widely, and his wealth of knowledge was rarely matched by others. As they spoke and drank, the pot of tea was soon finished. After the two of them finished drinking the tea in their cups, they suddenly stopped talking. Corpse Boss slowly stored the teacup into the spatial spirit tool, while Ling Han stood up, allowing Corpse Boss to store the table and chair as well. "If you can block 10 moves from me, I'll spare you once," Corpse Boss said. Ling Han didn't dare to be careless. He couldn't see through Corpse Boss's cultivation at all, and according to what Corpse 2 said, Corpse Boss had always been cultivating in the pond of the underworld, and it was extremely likely that he would only come out of seclusion after reaching the Shattering Void tier. If this was a Shattering Void tier elite, then he'd really be able to strike the skies and break through the 9 underworlds, terrifyingly powerful. 10 moves, if he relied on his own battle prowess to withstand it, it would probably be extremely difficult. Ling Han unleashed the Revere Life Sword, and was ready for battle. Corpse Boss very casually swatted a palm at Ling Han. Hung, the heaven and earth dimmed, and a large hand appeared out of thin air, pressing towards Ling Han. Without any fancy tricks, it was just an extremely ordinary palm. However, the power of this palm shockingly reached the peak stage of the heaven tier. Ling Han brandished his sword to meet it, but was immediately sent flying by the large hand, shaking his whole body violently and almost spitting out a mouthful of blood. It was extremely shocking. His physique had obviously reached the level of 9th tier rare metal, but his internal organs were still shaken under this one strike, as if rivers and seas were overturned, extremely uncomfortable. Second move. Corpse Boss waved another palm, and its power inconceivably increased by a large margin. Although it hadn't reached the level of the Shattering Void tier, it really wasn't too far off. This guy was definitely a shattering void tier existence. 10 moves to increase his battle prowess step by step, and the power of the third move would probably reach the level of the shattering void tier. Ling Han took another blow, and his whole body was slapped into a sheet of paper, becoming incredibly flat. However, he had managed to neutralize half of the might of such a terrifying blow. The remaining half was something that he could completely take on with his physique. Coupling toughness and gentleness. Corpse Boss revealed a look of surprise. I never thought that your physical arts had reached such a high level. However, this is only the second move. He waved his right hand again, and delivered a third palm strike. This time, it really reached the level of the shattering void tier. The heavens trembled and the earth cracked, groaning soundlessly under the battle prowess of the shattering void tier. Ling Han hesitated no longer, and waved his right hand, scattering out 108 short swords, forming the Ice Dragon Ground Blast formation. Pang! The large hand struck, but was forcibly stopped. An ice dragon appeared, blocking this palm strike. N. Corpse Boss looked surprised again. You're really surprising, actually being a formation master. This person was just over 20 years old, but not only did he have astonishing accomplishments in martial arts, he also had the identity of a heaven-grade alchemist. Now, he even unleashed a 10th-tier formation, which was truly inconceivable. How could a person possibly achieve such accomplishments? Corpse 2 said that you might be the reincarnation of some shattering void tier, possessing the soul of a previous life and being able to use the power of the realm, which makes some sense, Corpse Boss said. There was a limit to one's strength, and even if Ling Han started studying these 3 arts from birth, 20 years' time wouldn't be able to reach the pinnacle of any one of them, let alone all 3 at once. Other than being a reincarnation of a shattering void tier, there was no second possibility. However, reincarnation and rebirth were unheard of, like him and Corpse 2, although they still had bodies from several 100,000 years ago, their souls were completely unrelated to their previous bodies. Although the body was still this body, could it still be considered a continuation of the previous body? Soul reincarnation was inconceivable, and if this were to spread, it would shock the whole world. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, 7 more moves. Corpse Boss's expression was solemn, and he raised his right hand to his chest. A shocking light condensed on his palm, and vein-like patterns appeared, emitting an ancient presence. Was this his previous body's martial intent? Ling Han was somewhat gloomy. He clearly knew that his opponent was holding back a powerful move, but could only watch helplessly. He thought for a moment, and decided that he couldn't be so passive, unleashing Sunset Bow. Blocking 10 moves was blocking 10 moves, but it didn't say that he could only passively take a beating. Drawing the bow, knocking an arrow, and activating the Eye of Truth, he searched for Corpse Boss flaw. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 584. Doesn't match your motherfucking sister. Yin Hung immediately jumped out. Yin Lu, you're a sore loser. Pa. You're a man, yet you don't have any breadth of mind. Do you want to lean on me? She pointed at her surging breasts. The female rogue's character was already out of control. Yin Hung, pay attention to your manners, a senior immediately reminded. Yes. Yin Hung turned around and bowed slightly, pretending to be a lady. Yin Lu said, martial arts competition is a competition of one's own strength. Xianyuan Ziguang relied on his own bloodline power, but this brat used medicinal pills. This is obviously unfair. Otherwise, if a poly-tier cultivator took a transcending origin pill, wouldn't he be able to kill even flower blossom tier cultivators? What's the point? Transcending origin pill, a legendary forbidden medicine, also known as transcendence pill. No matter who it was, as long as one ate one, they could immediately transcend mortality, surpass the flower blossom tier, and reach the level of the spiritual infant tier. Naturally, killing flower blossom tier cultivators would be as easy as pie. And when the medicinal effect wore off, the user would immediately die, as the body couldn't withstand the power of transcendence. However, this kind of medicinal pill only existed in legends. No one had ever truly refined it, let alone consumed it. Yin Lu took out an example to explain that Chu Hao's action of consuming medicinal pills didn't conform to the rules of the martial arts competition. Instantly, many people discussed spiritedly, and quite a few nodded in agreement. Ling Han sneered, and said, "Borrowing external power is indeed unfair, but don't forget, this 5 turns black jade pill was refined by me." Xianyuan Ziguang having the power of bloodline was his good luck. Can't I rely on my own efforts to make up for my battle prowess? So reasonable. With that said, many people instantly leaned towards Ling Han again. However, these people's opinions weren't important. What was important was what the few big shots who had the power to decide said. After a while, Yin Shuiyang said, since Han Lin himself is an alchemist, he can reasonably consume medicinal pills. This battle, Han Lin wins. Final verdict. Yin Hong was instantly overjoyed. She had originally thought that it was impossible for Ling Han to defeat Xianyuan Ziguang, but she never thought that this guy would actually give her such a huge surprise. On the other hand, Yin Li's face was gloomy. Although the results of this competition wouldn't directly decide the pavilion master, it still held a great weight. The key was that he'd originally thought that victory was within his grasp this time, and he'd invited Xian Ji Yun and Xianyuan Ziguang at all costs, but he'd actually been defeated by a single person, which he couldn't accept. Master of both martial arts and alchemy. Was there such a monstrous person in the world? Yes, one had appeared in the North region previously, and his name was Ling Han. In the path of alchemy, he had even stepped onto the supreme path of a heaven-grade alchemist. Moreover, it was said that this person was quite talented in martial art and had entered the secret realm to participate in the treasure hunt. Wait, are there that many geniuses like that? Han Lin and Ling Han read it backwards. Isn't it the same? Yin Lu instantly came to a realization. Han Lin was Ling Han, and it was rumored that Ling Han had obtained the inheritance of the 12 palaces and even knew the location of a divine treasure trove. Then, it was understandable that he'd changed his name. You actually dared to ruin his plans, then you're also dead. Killing intent flashed in Yin Li's eyes. He decided to immediately spread the news that Han Lin was Ling Han. As for whether he'd guessed wrong or not, it didn't matter. It was enough as long as he could kill this brat. He didn't protest anymore. Since the big shot of the pavilion had already made a decision, protesting would only damage his image and reduce his points. After 3 rounds of competition, Yin Hong obtained a total of 80 points, firmly placing first. Ling Han returned to the side courtyard. Since he'd already helped Yin Hong, he naturally had to leave now to search for that boundless mountain and obtain the information that Zi Shuexian had left behind. However, he planned to delay for a few days. It wasn't that the new year had arrived, but rather that the Spirit Treasures Pavilion was about to hold an annual super auction. At that time, there would definitely be many precious treasures up for auction, which greatly interested Ling Han. In his hands, he currently had over 600,000 3-star origin crystals, which was enough for him to squander a little. But after the auction began, Ling Han discovered just how poor he was. Tycoons popped up one after another from who knows where, waving origin crystals and smashing them as if they weren't origin crystals at all, but just some rocks. Many of Ling Han's treasures were bought away just like that. In the end, he only managed to win one item. A flood dragon's tendon. The flood dragon had the bloodline of a true dragon, and after cultivating to the extreme, it could shed its snake body and transform into a true dragon. Because of that, this flood dragon's tendon was naturally incomparably precious, and only after spending almost all of Ling Han's savings did he manage to obtain it. It was also because the flood dragon's tendon couldn't be used as medicine, and could only be refined into a whip-shaped spirit tool. There were very few martial artists who used whips, so Ling Han was able to obtain it for close to 600,000 3-star origin crystals. Otherwise, it definitely wouldn't be so cheap. Ling Han obviously didn't want to make this flood dragon's tendon into a whip, but to use it as a bowstring. Once the auction ended, he wrapped the flood dragon's tendon around the bow, finally completing the creation of the bow. This was a 7th-tier rare metal paired with flood dragon's tendon, and an arrow made from 7th-tier rare metal could unleash its might from extremely far away. If a spiritual infant tier cultivator wasn't on guard, it was extremely possible that he'd be killed in one shot. Without circulating origin power, there wasn't much difference between spiritual infant tier and body refining tier in terms of defense. The attacker could concentrate his power on the arrow, but if the defender didn't know where the attack was coming from, he'd need to distribute origin power all over his body, or at a few vital points. In this way, it wouldn't be difficult for a flower blossom tier cultivator to break through a spiritual infant tier cultivator's defense. Ling Han was very satisfied, and named this bow Sunset Bow. The arrow was obviously Sunset Arrow, which would be his powerful killing move in the future. Paired with the Eye of Truth, he could completely ambush from 100 miles away, and even a spiritual infant tier cultivator could die in confusion, not even knowing who the opponent was. Ling Han, Ling Han. Yin Hong ran over in a hurry. What? Not calling me Master Ling, aren't you a bit too quick to burn the bridge after crossing it? Ling Han said with a smile. Hey, you tricked my good sister into your hands, and still want me to call you Master. Yin Hong's face was full of disdain, then her expression turned serious, and she said, I'll tell you a huge piece of news. From your mouth, the old Wang next door giving birth to a son is also a huge piece of news, Ling Han continued to tease. Ha, then you don't have to hear it. I came to tell you out of goodwill, but you have this kind of attitude. Really hurtful, I'll ignore you. Yin Hong made a move to leave. Wait, since you're already here, then say it, Ling Han said with a smile. You're really casual. Men that are too casual aren't reliable. I say, Sister Xian Er, what's so good about this kind of man, why not follow me? Aren't we just missing a penis? Without that thing, we really can't live on, Yin Hong said very roguishly, but it made Zhu Xian-er's pretty face flush, and she threw herself into Ling Han's arms, not daring to be with this female rogue. Helian Sun Shui, however, was curious, and asked, missing what penis? Niu also wants to know. Hu Niu didn't want to be left out. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 585. Don't listen to this female pervert's nonsense. Ling Han pointed at Yin Hong, and said, in the future, don't treat her as a woman, but as a man reincarnated into the wrong body, possessing a female body. So, if she approaches you, you have to imagine it as a man approaching you, understand? Helian Sun Shui and Hu Niu instantly revealed an ominous glint. A stinky man wanted to approach them? You're brainwashing. Yin Hong pointed out. As expected of a master, you're really full of tricks. No wonder so many little girls were tricked by you. Less nonsense, what's that message? Ling Han asked. Yin Hong finally said seriously, Heaven's Sword Sect, Cloud Phoenix Sect, Absolute Saber Sect, Blue Thunder Sect, and Earth Dragon Sect, the 5 great sects jointly announced that they will establish the Restore Heaven Academy to recruit all geniuses in the world. Oh. Ling Han was puzzled. The 5 great sects had been passed down since ancient times, and were the only 5 forces that had been passed down since ancient times. Each had a long history, so why would they jointly establish some Restore Heaven Academy now? Did they say why? He asked. The 5 great sects jointly announced that the world will be in great chaos soon, possibly leading to a break in the whole of martial art. Thus, the 5 great sects will select as many outstanding geniuses as possible to nurture. If there really is a great calamity, they can also leave behind the seeds of revival, Yin Hong said. This reason is quite lofty, Ling Han mumbled. Master Ling, are you interested in going? Yin Hong asked. Ling Han thought, and said, where is this Restore Heaven Academy? 9 Dragon Mountain. A thought flashed through Ling Han's mind. This Nine-Dragon Mountain was in Flying Flower County, and the boundless mountain that Zi Shuexian left behind the message should also be in Flying Flower County. What a coincidence. Since he was going to Flying Flower County, there was no harm in going along the way. After all, the 5 great sects had existed for who knew how many millennia, and possessed the most complete inheritance of martial art. Going there to study should be somewhat beneficial. Although Ling Han obtained many secret arts in his previous life, how could one person's power compare to the accumulation of countless generations? If all the monstrous geniuses in the world are gathered here, I will be looking forward to it, said Ling Han with a smile. I knew you'd be interested. However, not everyone can enter this Restore Heaven Academy. The 5 great sects will first issue notices to some geniuses, allowing them to directly enter the academy. As for the remaining people, they'll have to pass through layers of screening, Ing Hong continued. I see. Ling Han smiled and said, I wonder if anyone sent me a notice. Yo, Grandmaster Ling, are you jealous? Ing Hong laughed loudly. Let me tell you a piece of unfortunate news. Xianyuan Ziguang has already received the notice, and will set off this morning. As for you, you haven't made any movements at all. Ling Han was puzzled, and said, in terms of martial art level, I'm at least not inferior to Xianyuan Ziguang, and in terms of alchemy ability, I'm even a high-level earth-grade alchemist, so why did they skip over me? He wasn't placing too much importance on this admission quota, he simply couldn't understand. Grandmaster Ling, you're too full of yourself. Ing Hong shook her head with a smile. The 5 great sects must have planned for the establishment of the Restore Heaven Academy long ago, and have already confirmed a batch of geniuses that can enter the academy, such as Yao Huiyu, Small Saber King, Dong Ling, and the others. As for you, how long has it been since you appeared? It was indeed so. Only 3 days had passed since Ling Han defeated Xianyuan Ziguang, and Million Treasures City had been sealed off by the 4th Great Formation, so no news could have possibly spread. Ling Han laughed heartily. He had indeed taken things for granted. After Ing Hong left, Ling Han couldn't help but ponder. In the memory stone that Zi Shuexian left behind, 10,000 years ago, someone from the divine realm should have come and destroyed the inheritance of the previous generation's martial art, and according to the news of later generations, it was the Heaven's Sword sect and the other 4 great sects that joined forces to turn the tide and drive away those invaders. Ling Han once went to an ancient battlefield in Rain Country, where at least a few hundred Heaven-tier elites joined forces to attack a shattering Void-tier cultivator, leaving behind countless corpses. Now, that shattering Void-tier cultivator might not be a shattering Void-tier cultivator, but could be a divine being whose tier was suppressed by this realm. However, Zi Shuexian said that all of this could be a lie. Now, 10,000 years had passed, and the 5 great sects opened the Restore Heaven Academy, saying that the world was extremely likely to be in chaos. Could it be that the divine realm was going to descend and invade again? Ma Duobao once said that he wanted to split open the sky and bring a piece of heaven and earth directly into the divine realm, allowing even the fowls and dogs to ascend to heaven. Did he also foresee this great chaos? Also, Feng Piyun said that he didn't dare to rashly break open the void, and that there would be a great disaster. Could it also be related to the divine realm? Ling Han thought until his head swelled. He knew a lot of things now, but he couldn't understand more and more. Why did the divine realm want to invade the vast lands? What was there that was worth the divine realm coveting? Moreover, if the divine realm really wanted to destroy the vast lands, could the 5 great sects really be able to stop them? If several thousand or tens of thousands of divine beings came, even if they were all suppressed to the shattering void tier, wouldn't that still be enough to sweep them away? Ling Han couldn't understand no matter how much he thought about it. If it really was an invasion by divine beings, then what ability did the 5 great sects have to drive out the foreign races and return their lands? Could it really be as Zi Shuexian said, that everything was a lie? He could only find out if he found Zi Shuexian's message. This trip to the Heaven Mending Academy was something he had to do. Ling Han had nothing to worry about anyway, so once he made up his mind, he decided to immediately set out. Zhu Erxian and the other two girls obviously wouldn't object. After bidding farewell to Yin Hong, they set out on their journey. Ling Han originally wanted to meet Kang Zishe. This was very likely a descendant left behind by his disciple, but he was a heaven-grade alchemist now, after all. His days were very comfortable, and there was no need for him to worry. Moreover, if he said he was the ancestor of the Kang family, he'd definitely be rolled his eyes, right? Forget it, he'd think about it later. The only thing that left Ling Han with regret was that he still didn't know what the treasure that the Thousand Corpse sect was scheming for when they attacked Million Treasures City was. Although it might not be useful to him, once a person's curiosity arose, he would always keep it in mind. The four of them set out, heading towards Flying Blossom County. They hired a carriage, and Ling Han naturally returned to his original appearance. Always wearing a face that was disguised made him uncomfortable, too. After arriving at the Restore Heaven Academy, he could disguise himself as another person, and Han Lin's identity was very likely already exposed. After all, the two people's names were so similar, and they both cultivated both martial arts and alchemy. Their achievements were frighteningly high, and it was extremely easy for people to associate them together. In the Black Tower, Ling Han played with the Sunset Bow. The Flood Dragon's tendons were indeed tough. Not to mention Flower Blossom tier warriors, even Heaven tier warriors might not be able to use this bow. If one didn't cultivate physical arts, drawing the bow would consume a large amount of origin power, and how would one be able to concentrate the excess origin power on the arrow to deliver a fatal blow? Unlike weapons like swords, sabers, and spears, even if forged with rare metal, they wouldn't weigh more than 50 kilograms. Who didn't have this bit of strength? But to draw the sunset bow, what kind of strength was needed to lift up a mountain? Cell phones were more refreshing to read. Chapter 586. It's quite useful to have a strong physique. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh ruefully. Otherwise, he'd have to expend a large amount of origin power on drawing the bow, and when he used Annihilating Dragon Star Arrow, its power would definitely be much weaker. I wonder if Sword Emperor and the others cultivated physical arts. He was suddenly curious. Drawing the bow and shooting the arrow, Xiao, the sunset arrow shot out. At first, it could still be seen with the naked eye, but after shooting for a few miles, it accelerated to a terrifying degree, truly like a stream of light, traveling 100 miles in an instant. Extremely far away, a target set up by Ling Han was instantly shot by the sunset arrow, turning into shattered rocks that filled the sky. The maximum range is 300 miles. Any further and the power will start to weaken, and the speed will also start to decrease. Ling Han said to himself. However, from shooting to the maximum range of 300 miles, it only needs 1/100th of a heartbeat, so fast that even the naked eye can't catch it. After advancing into the flower blossom tier, there'll be warning signs when encountering danger, but these warning signs won't tell you where the attack is coming from or what kind of attack it is. Taking myself as an example, if I didn't have the Black Tower, the first reaction would definitely be to condense poly power and set up defenses all over my body. However, under the Annihilating Dragon Star Arrow, even the defense of a spiritual infant tier elite can be penetrated. If origin power is spread all over the body, and not concentrated on a few vital points, how could a defense that was divided into several parts be able to block the Annihilating Dragon Star Arrow? This also reminds me that I'm not the only person in the world who knows archery, and some spirit tools can have similar effects. Thus, if I encounter such a situation, hiding in the Black Tower is obviously foolproof, but sometimes I'm not allowed to enter the Black Tower, so I can only spread origin power on various vital points and can't have the extravagant hope of escaping unscathed, or else it'll be seeking death. Fortunately, I've cultivated body of iron sheet, and ordinary people can't threaten me. If I cultivate indestructible body of diamond, I believe that even a spiritual infant tier warrior using Annihilating Dragon Star Arrow can't hurt me. Ling Han concluded. The annihilating dragon star arrow combined with a precious artifact like the sunset bow, in addition to the Eye of Truth, had become his greatest killing move. It could easily take someone's life from 100 miles away. There are too few arrows. I have to forge some more. It's just that 7th tier rare metal is too precious. Where can I get so many? He suddenly felt a strange movement. The carriage had been ambushed, and in an instant, the carriage exploded. The 2 coachmen were also killed. Dust flew everywhere, and 3 masked elders appeared, giving off a terrifying aura. Where is he? An elder asked. Could it be that it's a diversion, purposefully moving out in the open to attract our attention, but in reality, it's another path? The second elder said. What a meticulous mind, said the third elder. Although Han Lin might not be Ling Han, this matter involves the inheritance and divine treasures of the 12 palaces. We can't let him go even if he's wrong, said the first elder. Yes. The other 2 elders nodded. Let's go. The 3 leaped up and walked back. Ling Han exited the Black Tower. From what the 3 revealed, they'd already seen through his disguise, but they still couldn't be completely sure. These 3 were truly vicious and merciless. In the situation where they weren't sure of his identity, they still suddenly attacked to kill, truly ruthless. The spiritual infanteer. He glanced at the 2 coachmen who died violently, and a cold glint flashed in his eyes. Without hesitation, he took out the sunset bow, nocked an arrow, and activated the Eye of Truth. The 3 elders who'd already gone far away instantly appeared before his eyes. Brute force erupted, and Ling Han drew the bow. The flood dragon tendons tightened, and the muscles on Ling Han's arms bulged high, feeling full of power. He'd already activated the annihilating dragon star arrow, and the arrow forged from 7th tier rare metal instantly weaved densely with vein-like patterns. One after another, simple and unadorned vein-like patterns appeared, and the entire arrow seemed to come alive. Go! Ling Han shouted lightly, and loosened the 5 fingers on his right hand. Instantly, the arrow turned into a stream of light and shot out. He immediately took out a second arrow, drew the bow again, and shot again. He drew the bow 3 times and shot 3 arrows consecutively. Instantly, he staggered, and his face turned pale. Shooting 3 arrows consecutively in a short period of time exhausted him greatly. 100 miles away. The 3 elders stopped at the same time. A strong warning rose up in their hearts, and under the urging of their instincts, they all condensed their origin power, forming a shield in front of them. Xiao, a stream of light attacked, swiftly shooting towards the elder in the middle. The 3 practically didn't even have time to react, and the stream of light had already shot to the left side of the elder's chest. It turned into a sharp arrow, its whole body twined with divine light and densely woven vein-like patterns. Pooh! Without any suspense, the origin power shield couldn't block it at all. With the star dragon star arrow's vein-like patterns, in addition to the fact that it was itself made from 7th tier rare metal, its destructive power was really too terrifying, and it easily pierced through the origin power shield. Once the shield was broken, the elder's body was naturally too weak to withstand a single blow. Pooh! Blood splattered, and this arrow had already sunk into the elder's chest. It then pierced out from his back, and once again broke through the origin power shield. Only then did the arrow's power almost deplete, and it stabbed into the ground. The elder's eyes instantly lost their luster, and he suddenly knelt down. His figure swayed slightly, and he fell head first onto the ground. 1 arrow to kill, 7th brother. The other 2 elders exclaimed, but before they could do anything, the second stream of light had already arrived. With the previous example, they obviously didn't dare to disperse their origin power for defense, and instead spread it on a few vital points. Pooh! A streak of blood splattered, and the second elder was also shot. Fortunately, because he only spread his origin power on the vital points, although it still wasn't concentrated in one place, the defensive power still increased many times. Thus, even if the eye was hit by an arrow, and the eyeball exploded, it still didn't enter the brain after all. Old Fifth, the third elder exclaimed, and wanted to reach out to help him up, but the third stream of light also shot over. He roared loudly, and covered his face with both hands, while his heart and dantian were filled with origin power. After 2 times, he obviously already had sufficient preparations. This arrow still shot towards his eyes, and his arms were immediately pierced through by the arrow. However, being blocked like this, the power was greatly reduced, and it just stopped in front of his eyelids, but his hands were forcibly pierced through by the arrow. It took a long time to describe, but actually, the whole process only took a breath's time. Out of the 3 great spiritual infant tier elites, 1 was dead, and 2 were injured. If people knew that all this was done by a flower blossom tier martial artist, probably no one would dare to believe it. The 2 surviving elders didn't even dare to pull out the arrow, and both took a defensive stance, guarding against the attack of the 4th arrow. They didn't dare to run, because if they ran, it would be even more impossible for them to defend. Blood dripped drop by drop from the 2's eyes and arms. The blood of a spiritual infant tier elite was very terrifying, possessing great power. When it landed on the ground, it was like the bombardment of a meteor, causing the ground to tremble. Chapter 587. Nonsense, the heaven tier reprimanded. The rules set by our ancestors have all been weathered by wind and rain for millions of years, so they are naturally the truth. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "Are you stupid? What rules set by our ancestors? Those are obviously set by the strong. I'm strong, so I can speak. This is the truth that will never change for tens of thousands of years. Since that's the case, I'll beat you into submission." The heaven tier took large strides, his essence, chi, and spirit bursting forth like a blazing furnace. Ling Han smiled, and said, "Then I'll use you as a chicken, and kill you for these monkeys." Impudence. The heaven tier was furious. He was an elite of the heaven tier, a supreme existence in the East region, and now he was actually mocked as a chicken. How could he not be furious? He humphed, and drew out a long cyan whip. With a shake, this whip immediately straightened like a long spear. Elder Zhang is angry, and is going to fight for real. That's only natural. Elder Zhang is a well-known figure in our East region, and among the 10 strongest, he can be ranked in the top 5. This brat actually dares to insult Elder Zhang, he's completely courting death. The elites of the East region were all discussing spiritedly. They naturally thought that Ling Han was dead for sure. The elite of the heaven tier was surnamed Tan, and his given name was Zhang, but no one dared to call him directly by his name, and all referred to him as Elder Zhang. Jia Zhang was one of the leaders of the elites of the East region this time. His move this time could be considered a battle between kings, the strongest battle between the 2 sides. Of course, in the eyes of the elites of the East region, there was no suspense in this battle, it was definitely Jia Zhang's complete victory. Ling Han extended his right hand, and said indifferently, "I'll give you a handicap of 1 hand." Fuck. Flames immediately danced on top of Jia Zhang's head. For an elite that had reached his level, even if he didn't cultivate fire element arts, he could still draw upon the spiritual chi of heaven and earth with a single thought, and turn it into flames. He was obviously furious. A mere junior in the deity transformation tier, so what if he had shocking talent? He actually said he would give him a handicap of 1 hand, causing his eyes to spit fire from anger. This junior really didn't know the difference between life and death. He brandished his whip spear, and attacked Ling Han. Ling Han hadn't seen this kind of weapon, and couldn't help but feel curious. He shifted his feet, wondering what was so outstanding about this technique. Needless to say, this spirit tool was really quite extraordinary. It could be used as a spear thrust, but after it was blocked, it could turn into the softness of a whip, forming a lashing attack. Patterns were also branded on it, and after being activated, it emitted a faint blue light, its power astonishing. Being able to rank among the strongest in the East region, he obviously wasn't boasting. Unfortunately, he was facing Ling Han. My physique is comparable to 9th tier rare metal, so how can you injure me? Even if you use strange fire to melt it, it wouldn't be something that can be done in a short period of time. At least a few days and nights would be needed to refine it. Although Jia Zhang was fighting fiercely and seemed to have the upper hand on the battlefield, suppressing Ling Han, in reality, he wasn't a threat to Ling Han at all. It was only because Ling Han was thinking about the changes of this whip spear that he didn't retaliate from beginning to end. Elder Zhang, eliminate this extremely audacious guy. That's right, kill this brat, and we can return to the East region. The spiritual qi in this place is too thin, and staying here for one more day is one more day of loss. What? Jia Zhang and the others were so shocked that their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. This, how could there possibly be such a swift and fierce sword technique in this world, attacking 8 great heaven tier elites at the same time, and making everyone feel an irresistible sense of helplessness? This realization was already too late. The sword light streak passed, and the 8 great heaven tier elites all fell down, instantly dead. In the camp of the elites of the East region, there was only dead silence left. How could they resist? They couldn't resist at all. Ling Han withdrew his sword, and said indifferently, "How is it? Is there anyone else who wants to surrender, or stubbornly resist to the end?" The heaven tier elites of the East region had all died in battle, and the ones left were only in the deity transformation tier. Facing Ling Han, who was like a god, they could no longer summon the slightest bit of desire to fight. Some people surrendered on the spot, but there were also some who chose to flee. They didn't want to become someone else's servant. Hunyo showed her might, her body turning into lightning. Every grab was accurate, and who could escape from her hands? After luring the enemy deep in, she closed the door and beat the dogs. The East expedition troops of the East region were declared completely annihilated. Ling Han summoned all of them to surrender. In the face of death, very few people could face death with equanimity. Moreover, they were also ordered to attack, and had no irreconcilable hatred with Ling Han, so why should they fight to the death? Could it really be that the middle state would confer upon them the title of martyr? Chapter 588. After some consideration, Ling Han finally gave up on this tempting plan. After all, Yin Lu hid in the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, with Heaven Tier, or even shattering Void Tier elites overseeing, so killing her was too difficult. He'd kill her later, since she was just a small character. Ling Han didn't hire another carriage, and just walked through the mountain forest with the 3 girls. With beauties as his company, he would tease Zhu Xian'er, the beautiful fairy, from time to time, and be teased by Helian Sun Shui, the adorable girl, and fight over meat with Hunyo. His days were actually very comfortable. 7 days later, a vast body of water appeared in front of them. This wasn't an ocean, but an inland lake that was even vaster than the ocean, named Yangzhong Lake. Crossing with a boat would be too slow, so Ling Han and the others walked on the waves. With their strength, even the weak tension of the lake water was enough for them to borrow strength as if they were walking on flat ground. However, walking on water was different from running on ground, after all, and after a day, they were unbearably tired. When night came, they found an island to rest, eat and drink to their heart's content, and after a good night's sleep, they continued on the next day. This inland lake was indeed ridiculously large. After 3 days, they still hadn't walked out, and according to the map, they'd only walked half the distance. Ahead, a dense fog suddenly appeared, a vast expanse of whiteness. Legend has it that there's a 1,000-year-old flood dragon here that breathes mist every day, forming a source of mist on the lake. I don't know if it's true or not. Ling Han stopped, and didn't immediately enter the range of the mist. Nyo wants to eat flood dragon meat. Hunyo immediately clapped her hands and shouted. Being able to live for 1,000 years, this flood dragon at least advanced into heaven tier. Let's not give it rations, Ling Han said with a smile. Hunyo pouted, appearing very pitiful. She hadn't eaten flood dragon meat yet. However, we have a true dragon descendant here, who might be able to deter that flood dragon, Ling Han said. Who? Hellion Sun Shua asked very curiously. Ling Han and the others all looked towards her. Of course it's you. Hellion Shua pointed at herself, shook her head repeatedly, and said, I am a human, not a monster. Let's go. If we encounter that flood dragon, we'll hide and let this sea girl deal with it. Ling Han smiled and said to Hellion Shua, hold the brick well. If anything comes out to ambush us later, smash it. Hellion Shua nodded forcefully. She didn't know the level of martial art at all. Otherwise, if she knew that there might be a heaven-tier flood dragon here, and she thought that she didn't even have the strength to truss a chicken, she would definitely be so scared that she would directly close her eyes. The four of them walked forward. There was a strong fishy smell in the fog, which made people want to vomit. No wonder people guessed that there was a flood dragon here. From the fishy smell, there was definitely a big guy here. Ong! A muffled sound rang out, and the surface of the lake immediately began to ripple, forming a furious tide. A 30-meter-tall wave slammed towards Ling Han's group of four. They hurriedly flew up and dodged this furious wave. Hong! The wave rolled over, but immediately, another wave rose up and heavily smashed over. After at least a few dozen waves crashed over, the surface of the water calmed down. Did that big guy yawn? Ling Han asked in surprise. It was really hard to imagine what kind of gigantic body this lake monster had. It was merely a yawn, yet it caused such a huge commotion. Be careful. Zhu Xian warned. They advanced carefully, but didn't discover anything, mainly because this fog was a bit strange, greatly affecting their vision. As they walked, a colossus suddenly appeared in front of them. The four of them thought that they'd encountered that big guy, but when they looked again, it wasn't right, because it wasn't a beast, but a ship. Such a large ship, completely black like a black dragon. This inland lake was so large that there were naturally merchant ships coming and going, but this definitely wasn't a merchant ship, because there was a statue of a skeleton at the bow, emitting a malevolent aura. In the fog, the entire length of the giant ship was finally revealed. It was 300 meters long, but only 30 meters wide, so it gave people a feeling like a snake or a dragon. Yo, your luck isn't bad, actually encountering two big beauties. Boss, there's also a little beauty. Pay, you damn pervert, such a small girl is pleasing to your eyes, I'm ashamed to be associated with you. Two people appeared on the bow, both men in their 40s. One was tall, and the other was short and skinny, just the two extremes. However, what was unacceptable was that the short and skinny one was the boss, while the tall one's face was full of vulgarity, and his eyeballs were slippery. There was no tall image to speak of. The short and skinny man stared at Ling Han and said, "Little brother, why don't you come join us? This big brother likes to help others, so how about I give you a ride?" Ling Han smiled slightly and said, "We don't seem to be going the same way. I appreciate your kindness, but you can go your own way, and I'll go mine." The short and skinny man's expression immediately darkened, and he said, "Are you rejecting me? I hate being rejected the most." Not good, the boss is going to get angry. The tall man hastily hugged his head and cried out in alarm, appearing incomparably panicked. This act was really well done. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. How will he get angry? I'm looking forward to it. When our boss gets angry, blood will cover the mountains and rivers, and all life will die, said the tall man. Brat, I advise you to quickly surrender. Don't provoke our boss. Too late. The skinny man roared, "Little ones, go kill that brat and snatch those two beauties." And the little one, I like her, said the tall man hastily. Shio, 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 several hundred men instantly jumped down from the black ship, all wearing black armor that flashed with a strange light. Ling Han made a slight sound of surprise, stared at those armors, and said, Hunyo, Xian you guys go. N. Zhu Xian answered gently, and Hunyo roared, already charging up. Hellion Sun Shua naturally stayed behind Ling Han obediently, nervously raising the brick, looking like she'd smash whoever dared to come over. Peng, 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 Hunyo unleashed her invincible might, kicking those black-armored men as if they were made of straw, flying all over the sky. Her advancement wasn't slow at all, also reaching the high level of the flower blossom tier. Added with her freakishness, her battle prowess was obviously terrifying. But strangely, under her claws, these people's armors actually didn't shatter. Zhu Xian immediately realized something was off. The opponents were all very weak, most of them at the spiritual ocean tier, and only a few were at the spiritual pedestal tier. Logically, they should be easily suppressed by her, a peak stage spiritual pedestal tier warrior. However, when she slashed with the 100-ray sword, she couldn't tear apart these people's armors at all. The 100-ray sword was the new sword that Ling Han forged for her, forged with 7th-tier rare metal. Although it hadn't become a spirit tool yet, in terms of sharpness, it wasn't inferior at all. Strange, truly strange. The defensive power of these people's armors was too shocking. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 589. A chaotic battle ensued. Zhu Xian and Hunyo had the absolute upper hand in terms of cultivation level, but the armor on their opponents was extremely strange. Sharp weapons were difficult to damage, and even Hunyo's claws couldn't cut through it. Thus, although these people were hit by the heavy power to the point of vomiting blood, not a single one of them died. Hunyo was furious. She leaped over and bit fiercely at one of the men's armor. With a crack, she actually managed to bite off a piece of armor, fully showing how terrifying her teeth were. Monsters! The pirates all cried out in shock. In their minds, these armors were indestructible. At least, none of the enemies they had met before had been able to break through them. At least, none of the enemies they encountered before could destroy this layer of protection. Zhu Xian also changed tactics, only using the 100-ray sword to parry, while her left hand turned into a palm and struck at these people's chests, wanting to use palm power to penetrate the armor and directly kill them with tyrannical power. However, she never expected that these armors actually had the effect of absorbing power. She was obviously at the peak of the spiritual pedestal tier, but the destructive power of her palm strike was sharply reduced to the level of the spiritual ocean tier, and could only lightly injure some pirates. Interesting, interesting. Ling Han kept nodding. These people's armors really broadened his horizons. However, these armors were only armors, not spirit tools that could be activated to form a shield. Thus, Zhu Xian changed her battle style again, directly stabbing at the pirates' exposed necks and eyes with her sword. Now, these pirates were doomed. How could they block a peak stage spiritual pedestal tier elite? Moreover, Zhu Xian was a genius of the North region. Previously, she just didn't want blood, but now that her killing intent rose, how could these people block it? Hunyo, on the other hand, liked to compete. After proving that she could beat that armor, she instantly lost interest and punched repeatedly, killing the pirates one by one. Her killing nature was terrifyingly great. Now that she appeared, her eyes immediately turned red, and she continuously chased after the pirates. "Boss, we can't hold on anymore." The pirates all cried out, and some already escaped back to the black ship. Their discipline was lax, and they were just a random troop. The skinny short man snorted, and said, "A bunch of trash, isn't this tarnishing my reputation? Come, prepare an origin crystal cannon and blast that brat to death." "Boss, why did you kill that brat?" asked the tall man. As the saying goes, to capture the bandits, first capture the leader. To shoot a man, first shoot his horse. This brat is the leader. Killing him will naturally be a success. What's more, are you willing to blast that pretty girl into a bloody pulp? Big Metal Head said disdainfully. The tall man scratched his head and said, of course. Boss, it's not like you don't know me. I only like little girls and boys. Get lost, you pervert. On the body of the black ship, a few windows were opened, and a few pitch-black cannons poked out. All of them were aimed at Ling Han, emitting a frightening cold light. Ling Han instantly felt a sense of danger. He hurriedly flung Helian Xuanxue aside and said, Hai Nyo, stand to the side. This thing seems very powerful. Just as he finished speaking, Xiao, 3 flashes of white light shot out towards Ling Han. This speed was really too fast, so fast that by the time he realized that he had been attacked, the attacks had already arrived in front of him, and there was absolutely no way he could dodge them. In that instant, Ling Han made a judgment in his heart. This was equivalent to the level of the spiritual infant tier. If he activated the thunder barrier, then he had at least a 30% chance of blocking it. However, time was too rushed, and he didn't have the time to do so. Hong, 3 flashes of white light surged past, and Ling Han disappeared without a trace. However, in the next instant, he reappeared, unharmed. He entered the Black Tower. Pooh! On the black ship, everyone was dumbfounded. In their impression, a blast from the origin crystal cannon would blast anyone into dregs, so why was this brat completely fine? Blast, blast again. Big Metal Head yelled. Ling Han's figure flew up and charged towards the black ship. He didn't want to become a live target. The muzzle of the cannon moved, continuously aiming at him. However, Ling Han used the demon fairy step, sometimes to the left, and sometimes to the right. It was so strange that it made people want to vomit blood. They couldn't track his movements at all, and couldn't fire another shot even after a long while. Once this origin crystal cannon was fired, the flower blossom tier warrior certainly couldn't dodge, because the speed was far inferior. However, the cannon muzzle still had to be aimed at Ling Han to fire. With this time as a buffer, how could a few spiritual ocean tier and spiritual pedestal tier cannoneers catch Ling Han's figure? In just a few steps, Ling Han had already arrived above the hull of the ship, slashing towards Big Metal Head with his sword. To catch bandits, first catch the king, that was what that guy said himself. However, Big Metal Head only looked coldly at Ling Han, and didn't have the slightest intention of dodging this sword. Wang! This sword slashed down, but a black screen of light appeared on the hull of the ship, forcibly blocking this attack. Ha ha ha, shoot for me. Big Metal Head roared fiercely with a grin. Instantly, 3 streaks of white light shot over. This time, they aimed in this direction ahead of time, as if knowing that Ling Han would definitely be blocked at this position. This ship was strange. Ling Han hurriedly entered the Black Tower again, and then immediately came out, faster than most people's reaction ability. They didn't realize that he disappeared for a split second. Even if Big Metal Head's cultivation was also at the flower blossom tier, he only had a misconception that something seemed to have happened to his eyes, and why was it Ling Han's turn to dodge? This ship, where did you guys get it from? Ling Han asked curiously. That sturdy armor, the ship's own defense, and the origin crystal cannon, such an armed force should belong to a super force, so how did it fall into the hands of a few pirates? None of your business. Big Metal Head snorted. Our boss said it's none of your business, the tall man mimicked. You shut your fuck you mouth, hurry and command the cannoneers to shoot all these people down. Big Metal Head slapped him. Boss, didn't you say those 2 beauties couldn't bear to kill? The tall man said, feeling wronged. Nonsense, brothers are all going to be killed by them, who cares if they're beautiful or not, kill them all. Big Metal Head said fiercely. Kill, kill, the tall man became excited, running towards the cabin. Ling Han frowned, and his figure spread out, already arriving by Zhu Xian'er's side, and said, Xian'er, enter the Black Tower. N. Zhu Xian'er immediately nodded, not asking why. Xiao, her figure immediately disappeared. Ling Han put Hu Niu into the Black Tower again. Helian Sun Shui couldn't be put in, and didn't need to be. Her physical arts surpassed the level of the spiritual infant tier, so she didn't fear that origin crystal cannon at all. Where are those two girls, one big and one small? Big Metal Head's expression was strange. How did these two live people suddenly disappear? He wasn't stupid, and immediately slapped his thigh. Just now, you also dodged like this. Chapter 590. You guessed it right, but there's no reward. Ling Han laughed loudly, and his figure flew up again. Holding the purple demon sword in his hand, he used the demon fairy step to prevent the opponent from aiming at him while he began to accumulate power, preparing to use the ultimate move, 10,000 techniques return to 1. When the mysterious 3,000 was used to attack a large number of enemies, the effect was great, but when used to attack, 10,000 techniques return to 1 was naturally even more awesome. Gathering 3,000 attacks into one attack, the destructive power was simply unimaginable. Shoot! Big Metal Head exclaimed. The cannon moved here and there, but it could not aim at Ling Han, so it simply gave up on him and turned to face Helian Xuanxue. Helian Xuanxue's face instantly turned pale with fright, and she said to Ling Han, I didn't hit them, why are they hitting me? Because they're bad people, and bad people won't reason with you. Ling Han explained, so when dealing with bad people, you don't have to reason with them, just swing the brick and smash. Oh. Helian Xuanxue nodded, made an aiming gesture, and then swished the brick in her hand over. The brick flew furiously, and just as it was about to hit the black ship, a black screen of light suddenly appeared on the body of the ship, forming a protective shield just like before. But this time, the light screen did not have the desired effect. With a bang, the light screen was actually completely shattered by the brick. The brick's momentum did not stop, and it directly sank into the hull of the ship. Then, continuous banging sounds could be heard, and Xiao, the brick flew out from the other side of the ship like a meteor, shooting into the distance. My brick! Helian Xuanxue exclaimed, and hurriedly chased after it on the waves. Hong long long, the black ship made a strange sound, and there were flames and black smoke coming out. The hull of the ship actually began to tilt, and it was actually about to sink. Ling Han gritted his teeth. Helian Xuanxue's brick was really awesome, directly sinking a large spirit tool-level treasure ship. Bang bang bang. The ship's hull began to explode. The cannons on the ship could turn crystals into attacks. This was very powerful, but it was also extremely unstable. Now that the ship's hull was on fire, these specially processed crystals also exploded. This was equivalent to several hundred spiritual infant tier elites bombarding the ship's hull. The destructive power created was too terrifying, and the entire ship practically disintegrated in an instant. Most of the pirates didn't even have time to react, and were directly blasted into dregs. Only Big Metal Head and his tall assistant managed to escape in time. After all, they were in the flower blossom tier, and it was one thing for them to be unable to stand against spiritual infant tier cultivators, but it could be seen that they were quick on the uptake and managed to escape in time, which still left them with a sliver of hope. Unfortunately, Ling Han was waiting for them. Ling Han knocked them unconscious with 2 slaps, and directly brought them into the Black Tower. Han. Helian Xuanxue returned with the brick. Seeing Ling Han suddenly disappear from where he stood, she couldn't help but be very displeased. This guy would sometimes suddenly disappear, making her wait for half a day. So bad. In the Black Tower, Ling Han slapped Big Metal Head and the tall man awake. Since they entered the Black Tower, then they shouldn't think about leaving in this lifetime. Considering that they were pirates, they definitely killed no small number of people in these years, and the punishment of imprisonment for life wasn't too much. Where is this? After Big Metal Head woke up, he was instantly shocked. Boss, where are we? The tall man grabbed Big Metal Head's arm in fright. You ask me, but who am I going to ask? Big Metal Head immediately slapped the tall man's head. Cough. Ling Han coughed, and said, you guys are now my prisoners. If I want you guys to live, you guys can live. If I want you guys to become eunuchs, you guys will have one less thing. Hiss. Big Metal Head and the tall man hurriedly covered their crotches with their hands. The reason why men were men, wasn't it because they had one more thing? Ling Han laughed mischievously, and stretched out his finger to the left and right. Instantly, Big Metal Head and the tall man's hands were separated by an invisible force. Their bodies also floated up, and their four limbs were forcibly pulled into the Chinese character. You don't mess around. My boss is very powerful. If you dare to touch a single hair of mine, my boss will definitely slaughter you. Big Metal Head's face paled in fright, and he hurriedly warned Ling Han. Ling Han gave an ah, and said, aren't you the boss? I'm their boss, but I still have a boss. Big Metal Head said stubbornly. I'll give you a word of advice, don't ever go against my boss. Although my boss is also in the flower blossom tier, he grasps many strange things, and his battle prowess is too terrifying. Oh, just like that ship, Ling Han said offhandedly. I only have a silver dragon ship, and our boss uses a golden dragon ship. That's what's called powerful. Big Metal Head said proudly. Ling Han deliberately sighed, and said, first time being so awesome as a prisoner. Forget it, I'll just castrate him first. Castrate? You can't castrate him. Big Metal Head's face turned green from fright. Aren't you afraid my boss will find you for revenge? Not afraid, Ling Han said with a smile. Although these words were simple and clear, Big Metal Head didn't know how to refute. On the side, the tall man didn't even dare to fart, afraid that Ling Han would notice him. Ling Han summoned the bone sword, and said, I ask one question, you guys answer one, answer together. Whoever answers slowly, I'll peel off one of his eggs. After peeling the egg, I'll peel off the root. You guys calculate, how many eggs and roots do you have for me to peel off? Wasn't this simple? 2 eggs, the tall man said. 1 egg, Big Metal Head said, almost at the same time. Clearly, Ling Han's threat was very effective. Huh? Boss, you only have 1 egg, the tall man immediately asked curiously. Ha 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 ha, I'm dying of laughter. How can there be someone with 2 eggs? Big Metal Head, on the other hand, laughed so hard that tears looked like they were about to come out. Were these 2 buffoons? Ling Han waved the bone sword, making the 2 shut their mouths, and then said, who's your boss? Feng Wei Qi. Big Metal Head. Ling Han glanced at the tall man. Was this guy really stupid? He then said to Big Metal Head, what's the background of this Feng Wei Qi? I don't know either. I was originally a tyrant here, running amok in these waters. Who wouldn't fear me? But our boss is more powerful. After coming here 3 years ago, he subdued me and gave me that ship, making me even more powerful, Big Metal Head said. And that armor, was it also given to you by Feng Wei Qi? Ling Han asked again. Yes. Big Metal Head nodded obediently. Where's Feng Wei Qi now? Ling Han asked. Big Metal Head was a bit hesitant, but when the bone sword flashed and blood blossomed in his crotch, he immediately shivered in fright and said, our boss is on Blackwood Island. He's always been there. And where is Blackwood Island? In the southwest corner of the bewildering Mistwater domain. Normal people can't find it at all. Big Metal Head actually revealed a proud expression, but then immediately felt his balls ache, and his expression immediately collapsed. Chapter 591. Ling Han hesitated slightly, then nodded in agreement. First of all, battle prowess below Shattering Void Tier 7 stars couldn't hurt him at all, and the elites above this were already like phoenix feathers and scaled horns, pitifully few. Could it be that Hellion Rong was just for show? He had the cultivation of the 9th layer of the Shattering Void Tier, and his battle prowess had even reached 10 stars. He was the top 3 experts in the Northern Sea, standing side by side with Xianyu family's patriarch, Xianyu Tong, and it was difficult to distinguish second and third. However, the first was definitely Wen family's Wen Renjie. Although he was also at the 9th layer of the Shattering Void Tier, his battle prowess was shockingly 11 stars. 1 star, 1 world. Even if Xianyu Tong and Hellion Rong joined forces, they could only barely match Wen Renjie, and Wen Ren clan's Shattering Void Tier elites were obviously a notch higher than the other 2 great royal clans, forcing the 2 great royal clans to ally for self-protection. Xianyu royal clan's ancestral land was also on a huge island, called Peaceful Star Island. It was extremely far from Dome Cloud Island, and even Shattering Void Tier elites would have to travel for several days. Hellion Rong brought 9 Shattering Void Tier elites from the clan, plus Ling Han, Hellion Sun Shui, and Hun Yo, and rushed towards Peaceful Star Island. They didn't keep on traveling, and after traveling for 3 days, they stopped on a deserted island to rest, taking out all kinds of food and starting to eat. This was obviously in response to Hun Yo's strong request. Nyo would accompany a fight, but not eating was out of the question. Even Hellion Rong and the others were full of praise for the food in the Black Tower. This was truly a delicacy that even immortals would drool over, especially with the addition of all kinds of precious medicinal ingredients, like 10,000-year-old treasured pearl. How many of them were there in the entire vast lands? Even Hellion royal clan couldn't take it out. There was no other reason. Every 10,000 years, there would be a reckoning, and all living things would die out. Other than the living things in the mystery realm, how many could survive? This child is truly a genius. Hellion Rong hugged Ling Jianshui, his brows smoothing out, his old heart at ease. Ling Han still appropriately revealed some of his trump cards, such as a spirit tool that could accommodate living things. This was also very rare in the divine realm, but it wasn't unique, so he dared to reveal his wealth. However, only the most trusted people knew that the Black Tower wasn't as simple as a spatial divine tool. Ling Jianshui was already half a year old, and his brute force had impressively advanced into the Gushing Spring tier, which was practically frightening. When he was a bit older and opened up his spirit base to cultivate, his brute force would probably advance into the Flower Blossom tier, which was an incredibly high starting point. This was because his ancestral blood was too pure and thick. Even Hellion Sun Shui was far from comparable, and the Sea race valued bloodline the most, making Hellion Rong have the impulse to make Ling Jianshui the next clan head of the Hellion family. Of course, this was also related to Ling Han's willingness to throw resources at his son. What 10,000-year-old treasured pearl, 10th tier spiritual liquid, this brat bathed in these good things every day, so if this physique wasn't unreasonable, then there would be no justice. The premise was obviously that Ling Jianshui could withstand such medicinal power. If it were someone else, even if they had the same father, they still wouldn't be able to withstand this fortune. Ling Han, Sun Shui is my clan's most resplendent pearl. Your first child has to be adopted into our Hellion family, surnamed Hellion. Hellion Rong decided to snatch away his beloved. This child was really too outstanding. Ling Han hurriedly shook his head, and said, "This is my first son, so he naturally has to be surnamed Ling. This king has already betrothed the clan's most resplendent pearl to you, so shouldn't I want a grandson?" Hellion Rong said shamelessly. This was a super genius, and his future achievements would definitely surpass his predecessors, and it was even possible for him to reach a height that rivaled the imperial family. So, no matter what, he had to strive to the end. Your Hellion family is numerous and powerful, with clansmen numbering in the tens of thousands. My Ling family only has me, the sole heir, and you have the nerve to fight with me, not doing it. Ling Han gave a meaningful glance, making Hellion Sun Shui use the excuse of breastfeeding the child to snatch his son back. Hellion Rong couldn't help but lament. A grown girl couldn't be kept at home, and once she married out, she belonged to someone else's family, siding with an outsider too quickly. He refused to give up, and said, then before the age of 5, this child will first stay in the main family. After all, the main family's accumulation is deep, and can give the child the best growth conditions. Besides, this king is also worried that Sun Shui won't have enough milk, and will suffer the child. Hellion Sun Shui was dumbfounded. Was this still a biological father? In order to snatch the child, even his own daughter became the target of attack. My chest is a bit small, but is it to the extent of starving my son? Ling Han laughed mischievously, and took out all kinds of precious treasures from the Black Tower. Every time he took one out, Hellion Rong's face twitched. Some treasures were owned by the Hellion family, but the quantity wasn't that terrifying. You know, 1,000-year-old ginsengs were counted in baskets, so how could this quantity compare? And things like 10,000-year-old treasured pearls and 10th-tier spiritual liquid were things that the Hellion family couldn't take out. Complete defeat. Hellion Rong was speechless. Speaking of the child's cultivation, it was definitely better to follow Ling Han. A clan actually couldn't compare to one person. Hellion Rong expressed great pressure, and the area of shadow in his heart was even more enormous. After all was said and done, he still got Ling Han to agree to let Hellion Sun Shui's second child be adopted into the Hellion family. The old guy was really very proactive, egging Ling Han and Hellion Sun Shui to quickly rest and work hard to cultivate the next generation, making Hellion Sun Shui go crazy. Another 5 days later, Silent Star Island was finally in sight. Xiao, a figure flew out, blocking their path. It was a martial artist with a pair of bird feathers growing on his back. His feet were like duck feet, webbed, and his mouth was flat, protruding out, looking very funny. However, Hellion Rong and the others didn't have the slightest hint of a smile. For people like them who possess divine beast bloodline, the more atavistic their appearance was, the purer their bloodline was, and the more advantage they had in martial arts cultivation. For example, if they were born in the form of a dragon, then as long as they grew up, they wouldn't need to cultivate at all. After reaching adulthood, they would be the strongest true dragon in the world, at least so in the vast lands. Ha ha ha. Hunyo couldn't hold back, and laughed loudly as she said, Ling Han. Ling Han, do you think this duck is better stewed or roasted? As soon as these words were spoken, Hellion Rong and the others secretly cried out in alarm. This wasn't an ordinary member of the sea race, but a fierce general under the Xianyu royal family. His name was O Boluo, a dignified shattering void tier elite. As expected, O Boluo revealed an angry expression, and said coldly, well, so Lord Hellion and the others are here to eat this general. Hee, no need to speak. General O is a fierce general under the Xianyu royal family, who dares to be disrespectful to General O? Hellion Rong said indifferently. His status was above O Boluo's, and even if he was interceding on Hunyo's behalf, he wouldn't lose his imposing manner. O Boluo obviously wouldn't bicker with a little girl, the one who would lose face like this would only be him. He immediately waved his hand, and said, the king has been respectfully waiting for many days, please. His gaze swept over Ling Han, carrying a chill. Chapter 592. Big Metalhead snorted, and said, still not letting us in? Hee, wait a moment, Big Brother Metal. The small boat sailed forward again, and soon, a strange brilliance flickered, as if it had entered a viscous space and was forcibly squeezed out. Big Brother Metal, please come up, the four said. Ling Han and the other two boarded the small boat, and the four rowed and squeezed in again. Huh? Why is this girl carrying a brick? When the four saw the thing in Hellion Xuanxue's hands, they couldn't help but be curious. This girl couldn't be thinking of using this thing to smash their boss, right? Ling Han laughed, and said, "This girl lacks a sense of security. The brick is for self-defense." The four snickered, and said, "Following our big brother, she'll definitely feel very safe." Ling Han didn't pay any more attention to them. A distance of a few li was all it took for an expert to row to the shore. Not only were there strange black trees growing everywhere on Blackwood Island, even the ground was black, and it felt very hard when one stepped on it. "Where's Big Brother?" Big Metalhead asked. "Big Brother is naturally still in the cavern," a miscellaneous soldier said casually. "Where's the cavern?" Ling Han interrupted. A miscellaneous soldier sized up Ling Han, and said, "Big Metalhead, this little brother of yours doesn't know the rules. Is this something he should be asking?" Pa! Big Metalhead's ferocious appearance was revealed, and he immediately slapped that miscellaneous soldier's ear, yelling, "Just answer if you're asking, what's with all the nonsense?" This gave those four miscellaneous soldiers a fright. How could he suddenly change his face? They looked at each other, and said, "Big Metalhead, Big Brother ordered that no one is to disturb him when he enters the cavern. Since you've already sent the beauty over, please go back." "Brother, what do you say?" Big Metalhead asked Ling Han. "Nothing," Ling Han said with a smile. "Take care of them." "Yes, brother." Big Metalhead immediately made his move. Pa, 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 pa. 4 palms passed by, and the 4 people's heads immediately burst open, becoming 4 corpses. Ling Han summoned Hunyo. This little girl was very clever, so there was no need to worry that she would encounter any danger to her life. As for Zhu Xian'er, she'd better stay in the Black Tower. Although she was a genius, she was far from being able to compare with Hunyo's freakishness. "Cave, lead the way." Ling Han kicked Big Metalhead, who was still shocked by Hunyo's sudden appearance. He had never even heard of a spatial spirit tool that could accommodate living things, so he was obviously shocked. Big Metalhead led the way in front, while Ling Han and the other 2 followed behind. Helian Xuanxue looked around with a face full of curiosity as she pulled on the corner of Ling Han's clothes with her left hand, always looking like a little wife and a doormat. There were obviously a lot of miscellaneous soldiers on the island, but Big Metalhead cleared the way. He was a Flower Blossom tier elite, after all, and killed one as soon as he found one. He was vicious and merciless, living up to his identity as a pirate. However, as time passed, it was naturally impossible to silence them all. Suddenly, the island was filled with alarms. Peng, peng, peng. A loud sound was heard, and 3 enormous monsters appeared. These were truly monsters. They were humanoid, but were 10 meters tall. Their entire bodies emitted a black metallic luster, and they were actually 3 iron men. Puppets. Ling Han was surprised. Previously, many people thought that the rock spirit was a puppet, but in reality, these 3 big guys in front of him were the real puppets. His heart moved, and he summoned the rock spirit, saying, "Beat them up." The rock spirit instantly pounded its chest with both hands, then fiercely charged out, starting a fierce battle with the 3 iron men. They didn't seem to be human, but there was a huge difference between the 2. Puppets were puppets, and like corpse soldiers, they didn't have life. However, the rock spirit was completely different. It was a life nurtured by a rare stone, and could continuously grow and improve itself. Now, the rock spirit reached the peak of the Flower Blossom tier, and only lacked an opportunity to break through to the spiritual infant tier. However, it didn't rely on its own comprehension to break through, but rather absorbed the power of the rare stone to complete this crucial leap. "Go, find a cave, don't stop," Ling Han said to Big Metalhead. "Yes, yes." When Big Metalhead saw the rock spirit unleash its invincible might and completely suppress the 3 Iron Men puppets, he couldn't help but shiver inwardly. To him, these 3 puppets were invincible in the Flower Blossom tier, impervious to swords and spears, and difficult to injure by sharp weapons. Moreover, their power was endless. But now, they were beaten up by Ling Han's stone puppets, almost becoming 3 metal pancakes. "Brother, please follow me." He became more and more respectful, and the scales in his heart completely tilted towards Ling Han. They arrived halfway up the mountain, and saw that the belly of the mountain had been dug open, revealing a dark and gloomy space. There were a few scattered torches, and they could faintly see the situation. Peng, 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 loud sounds were heard as the rock spirit rushed over, obviously getting rid of the 3 puppets. Ling Han walked into the cave and activated the Eye of Truth. Even if it was completely dark inside the cave, it did not affect his vision. He could clearly feel that the space inside the cave was shockingly large, as if it was a small town. Moreover, the outlines of many places were very strange. His heart moved, and he said, "The silver dragon ship that Feng Wei-Qi gave you, was it taken out here?" "Huh, brother, you're really amazing, guessing this," Big Metal Head said in surprise. This time, he really wasn't flattering, but was shocked. Ling Han didn't guess randomly. This cave's shape was very strange, and if a ship was placed here, it would just be enough to fill in the long concave pit on the ground. It turned out that Feng Wei-Qi discovered an ancient ruin and obtained a treasure. He still stayed here all day, obviously unearthing even more precious things. Ling Han was truly interested. The silver dragon ship was very awesome, and the origin crystal cannon could pose an absolute threat to flower blossom tier warriors, and the light screen it opened reached spiritual infant tier level. Come to think of it, the golden dragon ship was definitely stronger, and Feng Wei-Qi was still digging below. Was there an even more shocking discovery? Ling Han walked quickly towards the depths of the cave. There were traces of excavation everywhere, and many things should have been unearthed. Come to think of it, the 3 puppets should also have been unearthed here. After walking a few steps, Ling Han suddenly became vigilant, and immediately swung his sword. Hunyo's reaction wasn't slow, either, and with a roar, she charged out. Peng, peng 2 silver colossi appeared. It was another 2 puppets, but this time, they weren't iron men, but silver men. They were not as hard as iron men. These 2 silver men were like humans, and their bodies were surprisingly flexible. Ling Han's sword slashed past, and Hunyo's fist blasted past. The silver puppet's body immediately caved in, but it didn't break open. It swayed a few times like water ripples, and the 2's attacks were neutralized. They were still in the flower blossom tier, but in terms of defense, they were much stronger than the iron men from before. Hardness was easy to break, and these 2 puppets perfectly solved this flaw. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 593. Ling Han was surprised, and said, "What metal is this? It's actually like liquid." He slashed out a few more times, attaching sword chi. Pu, pu, the 2 silver puppets were slashed with many wounds, but they immediately healed at an extremely fast speed as if they were really made of water. Cut open, then it was fine to recover. Peng, peng, the 2 silver puppets also launched an attack at Ling Han's group of 4. Although their bodies were soft like water when attacked, these 2 fists were extraordinarily ferocious. When the fists landed, a terrifying power circulated, extremely frightening. "Come, let's compete," Ling Han said with a smile. Putting away his sword, he also clenched his fists and charged forward. Peng, his 2 fists collided fiercely with the silver puppets. Instantly, the 2 puppets' 4 arms surged with a wave at the same time, starting from the fists and spreading towards the shoulders. However, during this process, the fist power that Ling Han blasted out was also gradually dissolved, and when it reached the shoulders, the fist power was also dissolved cleanly. Ling Han didn't have this kind of body structure, and could only take this hit head-on. However, his physique was on the same tier rare metal level, and taking this hit head-on was nothing. His internal organs were only shaken, but once the indestructible heaven scroll circulated, it recovered. "Mommy!" Big Metal Head exclaimed, his face turning green. He clearly knew the two silver puppets' offensive and defensive power. He completely expected that they wouldn't be injured under Ling Han's heavy fists, but Ling Han actually took 2 hits and was fine, which made him incredibly shocked. To him, the two silver puppets were completely monsters, but Ling Han was even more monstrous than monsters. At least, the two monsters still had fluctuations. Ling Han revealed a smile, and said, I once heard of a strange metal called original mercury. It's in a liquid form, and its gravity doesn't break. Come to think of it, these two puppets were forged from original mercury, which is why they have such strange characteristics. However, this thing is most afraid of fire. Ling Han's hands shook, and the 5 elements Chaos Lotus swayed lightly, converting all of his origin power into fire attribute. Instantly, a raging flame wrapped around his hands. He leaped up and charged toward the two silver puppets again. Boom, his fist landed on the chest of one of the silver puppets, and his fist went in without any suspense. However, as soon as he pulled his fist out, the silver puppet would immediately heal the wound. But this time, it would not be so easy. Flames blazed on Ling Han's fist, and a terrifyingly high temperature circulated. This wound began to continuously expand, and this puppet was like a piece of ice that had come into contact with a fire source, immediately beginning to melt. Found it. In the chest cavity of the puppet, there was a silver orb that was glowing, covered in dense runes. Puppet heart. This was the puppet's brain, heart, and source of power. Without it, it was just a pile of scrap metal. Ling Han reached out to grab the heart, but countless silver metals swept over, hiding the heart and preventing Ling Han from destroying it. Do you think you can hide? Laughed Ling Han. The flames on his hand raged, and the metal melted like snow. The heart reappeared in front of him. Boom! The other silver puppet naturally would not just stand by and watch. It raised its fists high and smashed down on Ling Han's back. Ling Han did not even turn his head. He simply pressed his left hand back to block this attack. Bang! But before the silver puppet's attack landed, Helian Xuanxue had already rushed out and smashed the brick on the silver puppet. How violent was she? With one smash, the entire body of the silver puppet fluctuated, and then it was slapped away, smashing heavily into the mountain wall. With a crack, like an egg, it shattered, splashed, and turned into a pool of liquid. But immediately, all the liquid began to wriggle, squirming toward the exposed puppet heart. Obviously, it wanted to reassemble its body. This girl's brute force was really terrifying. With one blow, she smashed such a powerful puppet into pieces. Ling Han stretched out his hand and grabbed onto the puppet's heart, suddenly pulling it out. The silver puppet immediately fell limp, wriggling incessantly as if it still wanted to transform into a human form, but was unable to do so no matter how hard it tried. On the other side, Hunyo also picked up the second puppet heart, disintegrating that puppet's battle prowess. With a wave of his hand, Ling Han stored the bodies of the two silver puppets into the Black Tower. He wanted to study them, and maybe he could recover the two puppets' battle prowess. In the future, he would throw them to his parents' side to protect them. They continued to walk towards the depths of the cave, and before long, another 4 silver puppets appeared, launching an attack on them. Ling Han didn't bother to make a move, and pushed Helian Sun Shui out, scaring the girl into shrieking while slapping the brick away. Pa, 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 the 4 silver puppets were instantly smashed into pieces. Ling Han then calmly picked up the puppet heart, easily dispersing this wave of attacks. Big Metal Head was dumbfounded. The combination of Ling Han's group of 3 was too terrifying. To him, the cave's defense was practically impenetrable, but in front of Ling Han's group, this defense was like paper. Brother, this isn't the most powerful puppet. The most powerful is the golden one, so be careful, he reminded, completely leaning towards Ling Han. It couldn't be helped. If Feng Weiqi found out that he brought people here, the latter definitely wouldn't spare him, so he could only pin his hopes on Ling Han. How powerful is the golden one? Ling Han asked. Probably reached the spiritual infant tier. Big Metal Head thought for a while, and speculated. I've only heard of such a guard, but never seen one. Spiritual infant tier? Ling Han revealed a pondering expression. Spiritual infant tier wasn't too terrifying, and as long as Hellion Sun Shua or Hunyo restrained it slightly, then after he finished accumulating power for 10,000 techniques returned to 1, the explosive attack would be enough to kill a spiritual infant tier. Not afraid. He smiled. They continued forward. The entire mountainside was probably hollowed out, and the space inside was ridiculously large. After walking for a while, they saw 4 tall statues standing solemnly ahead, all 15 meters tall. Strange, I've never seen such a stone statue before. Big Metal Head said somewhat bewilderedly. A cold glare flashed in Ling Han's eyes, and he directly knocked Big Metal Head out, storing him in the Black Tower, and took out the Demon Birth Sword. He now had 3 high-grade treasured swords, but the Demon Birth Sword was definitely the strongest. It was a 10th-tier spirit tool. Ka, 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 the 4 statues trembled slightly, and dust and debris continuously fell down. Peng, the 4 statues took a step forward at the same time, and a dazzling golden light appeared. A terrifying presence circulated, making one's skin feel like it was about to be torn apart. As expected, they were spiritual infant tier puppets. Hainyo, you hold them off first, Ling Han said with a smile as he began to accumulate power, preparing for a big move. Chapter 594. Hellion Sun Shue went up to meet it, and the brick swung, smashing towards the 4 golden puppets. Her brute force definitely surpassed the level of the spiritual infant tier. These 4 golden puppets were indeed at the spiritual infant tier, but in front of her, they were as fragile as infants, being continuously smacked away. However, these 4 puppets were made of an unknown material, as they weren't broken after being smacked by the brick, but a shallow hole was left, and they were slowly recovering. This made Ling Han very surprised. If Feng Wei-chi was here, he'd definitely be even more shocked, because although these puppets only had spiritual infant tier battle prowess, their material was at the deity transformation tier, yet Hellion Sun Shua smashed a hole in them. In contrast, the brick in her hand was completely unscathed, which showed that its hardness was above 8th tier rare metal. For Ling Han, accumulating power would only take the time of 1 or 2 breaths. When facing a powerful enemy of equal strength, this bit of time would be enough to take his life. But now, he was circulating his sword force without any pressure, so he naturally finished very quickly. Out of the way! Ling Han shouted, leaping up and slashing out with the Demon Birth Sword. A thick and long sword chi immediately danced out, turning into a divine dragon that bared its fangs and brandished its claws, sweeping towards one of the puppets. Being locked on by his sword intent, with the speed of this sword, it was impossible to dodge. Moreover, the puppet didn't have the thought of dodging at all, and simply turned around with a palm, smacking towards Ling Han. Peng, the sword light streaked past, and this puppet was actually cut in half at the waist. However, Ling Han also took a palm, and was instantly sent flying, spitting out an arrow of blood from his mouth. The spiritual infant tier was the spiritual infant tier, after all. Even if Ling Han's physique was comparable to 6th tier rare metal, it was useless, and he was directly hit to spit out blood. Fortunately, he still wore the Thunder Battle armor, and even if it wasn't activated, a portion of the power was eliminated. Otherwise, Ling Han wouldn't just be a matter of spitting out blood. Ling Han steadied his footing. His face was slightly pale, but his essence, chi, and spirit were soaring. The blood and chi in his whole body were boiling, and the indestructible heaven scroll circulated within his body. His injuries were quickly recovering. Ling Han, you're awesome. Hunyo clapped her hands. Such a huge puppet was cut in half by a single strike from Ling Han. Hanin, you're awesome. Hellion Xuanxue also clapped her hands, but she forgot that there were still 3 puppets currently attacking her. She only felt a strong gust of wind assaulting her, causing her to shriek in fright. She hurriedly brandished the brick in her hand. Pa, 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 the 3 puppets were once again sent flying. Ling Han set his eyes on the second puppet. This 10,000 techniques return to 1 was truly awesome. If he had used the mysterious 3,000 just now, what effect would those 3,000 attacks have on the rare metal of the deity transformation tier? But now, 10,000 techniques return to 1, combined with the demon birth sword, could even cut open such rare metal. It was truly shocking. Of course, Ling Han had also attached a bone text to increase the power of the sword chi. Otherwise, it would have been able to injure the puppet, but whether or not it would have been able to cleave it in two was a question mark. He began to accumulate power, preparing for the second attack. It was a pity that these puppets had no intelligence at all. Otherwise, after suffering once, they would have killed him first, or at least prevented him from unleashing a powerful move. However, they were all entangled with Hellion Xuanxue, seemingly determined to gnaw this bone off first. Xiao, Ling Han unleashed another strike. After 4 consecutive strikes, the 4 puppets also turned into 8 pieces. A strange liquid flowed out of the severed parts, greasy, and unknown what it was. Ling Han didn't care about the consequences. He first stored these puppets into the Black Tower, maybe he could make use of the waste. He summoned Big Metal Head again, and said, "Continue to lead the way." "Brother, where are those gold-grade puppets?" Big Metal Head asked with a deathly pale face. He'd only heard that these puppets were shockingly powerful, but hadn't seen them with his own eyes. Now that Ling Han and the others were here, but those 4 golden puppets were gone, how could he not be shocked? "They're in love, going to make love," Ling Han said casually. "Really?" Big Metal Head's face was full of doubt. Puppets also had that kind of need? "None of your business, hurry up and lead the way." Ling Han kicked. Big Metal Head shivered, and said, "Brother, it's too dangerous here. If you let me be the vanguard, I'll die." "Do you believe that I'll immediately kill you?" Ling Han waved the demon birth sword. Big Metal Head instantly didn't dare to speak any more nonsense, and obediently led the way. Ding, ding, dang, 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 dang. Ahead of him, there were sounds of people excavating something. There was also a clear light coming from there. Ling Han quickly walked forward, and saw that an obelisk had appeared in front of him. However, it had not been completely unearthed, and there were many people excavating underneath it. This obelisk was completely black, and lightning could be faintly seen flickering, appearing and disappearing from time to time, showing that this material wasn't ordinary. Could it be black jade? Ling Han said to himself. No, black jade is only a 5th-tier material, and it's being displayed here. Black jade doesn't seem qualified to be displayed here. Moreover, black jade fears lightning the most, so how could there be lightning flickering? "We'll know once we go," Hunyo said. She was simple-minded, so she naturally started with the most direct method. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "Hunyo is still smart. Let's go take a look." "Brother!" Big Metal Head hurriedly called out, so anxious that his face turned green. "My boss is over there, over there." He pointed ahead, and saw a man in embroidered robes standing in front of the obelisk with his back facing them, seeming to be studying this thing. "That's even better, let's go say hello." Ling Han said with a smile, and kicked out. Big Metal Head instantly cried out in pain and flew out heavily, falling onto the ground with a paw. His limbs spread open, and he fell solidly. This commotion was too big, and the man in embroidered robes immediately turned around. The workers who were working hard also stopped and turned their heads. Big Metal Head. The man in embroidered robes snorted, and his face revealed intense fury and killing intent. This place was forbidden, and no one could enter or leave. Otherwise, he wouldn't have needed puppets to guard it. The workers here would all be executed in the future, and he definitely wouldn't reveal the secret, but one of his subordinates actually snuck in here, which made him very shocked. Could it be that something went wrong in his impenetrable defense? He was obviously Feng Wei-Qi. He was tall, and his face was like a red date, with an aura of calmness. Big Metal Head, how did you come here? He asked. There was obviously a foolproof defense, so why was it broken through? He had to figure it out. This lowly person admires Boss Glory, and under the guidance of Boss Glory, unknowingly came here. Big Metal Head was full of nonsense, and cold sweat dripped down from his forehead. Do you believe this? Feng Wei-Qi sneered. Boss Feng, since Big Metal Head admires you so much, why don't the two of you become immortal companions? Ling Han smiled and walked out. Chapter 595. This girl was obviously Xian Yu Kai. Xian Yu Tong wasn't boasting. This girl's appearance was indeed extremely beautiful, completely not inferior to Hellion Sun Shui's, and her figure was even better, because her chest was surging like waves, completely unlike Hellion Sun Shui's flat chest. "Milord, a forcibly picked melon won't be sweet. I have no intention, and Lady Xian Yu has no intention, so why force us together?" Ling Han said indifferently. Xian Yu Tong snorted, and said, "Marriage is an important matter. How can it be decided by the younger generation?" Xian Yu Kai didn't dare to be rude to Xian Yu Tong, and only stared at Ling Han, and said, "If you dare agree, I won't let you off." After saying that, she leapt and left, only leaving behind a beautiful silhouette of her back. Ling Han smiled, and said, "Lady Xian Yu's marriage can be decided by milord, but as for mine, sorry." Xian Yu Tong's expression turned cold, and he said, "Ling Han, have you weighed the pros and cons? As long as you nod, not only can you marry a beautiful wife as beautiful as a flower, even the power of the Xian Yu royal family can be used by you to a certain extent. This king knows that if you establish a dynasty, the 5 great sects of the Middle State will definitely see you as a thorn in their side, but if you obtain the support of this clan, you have nothing to fear. And the price you have to pay is practically zero. Such a business that's guaranteed to be profitable, and you actually refuse." Ling Han sighed, and said, "I can only disappoint milord, but I still choose to refuse." Xian Yu Tong stared at Ling Han, and after a dozen breaths' time, he suddenly laughed loudly, and said, "Good, good, good. Although this king is indeed a bit disappointed, at the same time, I'm also very impressed. There aren't many people who can stick to their principles anymore." Ling Han smiled, and said, "Then what does milord plan to do next?" "Obviously to have you and Kai Er interact more. Youngsters, after understanding more and communicating more, they'll naturally get closer," Xian Yu Tong said. He still didn't give up on the idea. Ling Han didn't say anything more. How could he be easily swayed by someone? Xian Yu Tong changed the topic, and said, "It's not impossible to form an alliance and resolve grudges. This king can indeed change the condition, as long as you bring one thing for this king." "What thing?" Ling Han asked. Thinking about it, he knew that this thing definitely wouldn't be ordinary, or else why would Xian Yu Tong mention it? "There's still 10 days, and the ghostly dragon cave will open," Xian Yu Tong said. "True dragon's tooth?" Hellion Rong immediately exclaimed. Xian Yu Tong wasn't surprised. The ghostly dragon cave wasn't some secret in the North Sea, so how could Hellion Rong not guess it? He said, "That's right, it's the true dragon's tooth. As long as you bring this thing for this king, not only will our grudges be settled, this king will also give you a great gift." Hellion Rong's expression was solemn, and he said, "The true dragon's tooth is in the 4th layer of the ghostly dragon cave. Almost none of those who step in there come out alive, and even if there are a few lucky people, they die soon after coming out. There's obviously a simple and easy path to take, but this brat doesn't want it, so I can only pick a difficult path for him," Xian Yu Tong said with a smile. This king will still say the same thing. As long as you marry Kai, not only will our grudges be settled, the matter of the alliance can also be immediately finalized. Think about it carefully. Xian Yutong waved his sleeves, turned around, and left. He wasn't worried that Ling Han would run away, or else Ling Han wouldn't need to come. The matter of the alliance was the difficult problem that choked Ling Han's neck. Ling Han, however, was curious, and asked, "Father-in-law, what kind of place is the ghostly dragon cave?" Helian Rong revealed a hint of reverence, and said, "Because of the gap in history, an almighty dragon of the North Sea perished who knows how many years ago, and his body turned into the ghostly dragon cave. This almighty dragon was truly powerful, and his flesh and bones evolved into astonishing spirit medicine, but at the same time, there were also terrifying beasts. The ghostly dragon cave is a treasured land, but at the same time, it's also an extremely dangerous place." "So powerful," Ling Han said casually. According to legend, this almighty dragon had battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier, standing at the absolute peak of humanity. Even if gods descended to the lower realm, they couldn't rival him, so after he perished, such a strange phenomenon occurred. His body turned into a mystery realm, and it wouldn't be destroyed for millions and millions of years, Helian Rong said, full of reverence. Even though he also had battle prowess of 10 stars of shattering void tier, it was unknown how much worse it was compared to that old dragon. This almighty dragon was only one step away from becoming a true dragon, but unfortunately still lacked the final leap, and could only be called an alternative dragon. Helian Rong said with great pity. In the past, he didn't understand why such a powerful existence didn't become a god, but now it was very clear. This almighty dragon was too strong, surviving the reckoning. Even gods couldn't kill him in the lower realm, yet he didn't dare to shatter the void, and finally died of old age in the lower realm. Sigh, sigh. This made him even more determined to split open the sky. Otherwise, he would either be refined into a pill or die of old age in the lower realm. There was no third possibility. Then what's the matter with the true dragon's tooth? Ling Han asked. The alternative dragon's entire body turned into a ghostly dragon cave, and only a single dragon's tooth was completely preserved, containing endless dragon's power. For every true dragon's descendant, this is a supreme treasure. Helian Rong also became excited. Obviously, the true dragon's tooth also had a huge temptation for him. Ling Han instantly felt a rush of excitement. Didn't his son have the bloodline of a true dragon? If he refined the true dragon's tooth, what kind of heights could the little guy reach in the future? This deal was done. He asked Helian Rong about the ghostly dragon cave in detail, and Helian Rong didn't hide anything, telling Ling Han all the information he knew in full detail. The ghostly dragon cave was located in the west of the North Sea. Normally, it couldn't be entered because of the alternative dragon's might. Even if it had died for who knew how many millennia, the alternative dragon back then was really too strong, reaching the limits allowed by the vast lands. Even after its death, it could suppress a large number of shattering void tier elites. Every 500 years, the ghostly dragon cave would open once, and the duration varied, usually around half a month. The cave was divided into 4 layers, and every layer had all kinds of spirit medicines, all born from bathing in the dragon's essence, possessing astonishing medicinal power. But at the same time, the alternative dragon's flesh and blood essence also gave birth to a lot of strange creatures. They were powerful, but were limited by the alternative dragon's body, unable to walk out. However, if one wanted to go in and gather the herbs, they would have to face these monsters, which was very dangerous. Additionally, aside from the true dragon's tooth, there was also dragon's blood grass in the ghostly dragon cave. This was a good thing second only to the true dragon's tooth, and had astonishing effects on tempering the physique, allowing one to form a dragon's body because of it. Very well, he also wanted the dragon's blood grass to refine for his son, laying down the most solid foundation since young. He told his decision to Helian Sun Shui. Hellion Sun Shui obviously wasn't at ease, and said, the first 3 layers of the ghostly dragon cave are alright. Although it's dangerous, there's always a chance of survival. However, the 4th layer is incomparably dangerous. Those who enter are practically guaranteed to die, and the few that managed to escape also suffered heavy injuries, dying not long after. Ling Han nodded, and said, I'll do what I can. Chapter 596. After exchanging a few dozen moves, Ling Han flicked Feng Weiqi's blood saber away with a sword, and placed his sword on Feng Weiqi's neck. He laughed mischievously, and said, now can we talk? If you want to kill me, then kill me. Feng Weiqi actually didn't show any fear. He looked coldly at Ling Han. However, you'll also soon lose your life. Oh, could it be that you know how to curse? Ling Han said with a smile. If Feng Weiqi really had a treasure like the Vial of Curses, he might be a bit wary. My son is a spiritual infant tier elite, even at the peak of the spiritual infant tier. Feng Weiqi laughed loudly. If you kill me, he'll immediately sense it, and no matter where you hide, he'll find you, drag you out, and kill you. I really thought you weren't afraid of death. After all, you're still threatening me, wanting me to not kill you. Ling Han shook his head, patted Feng Weiqi's face, and said with a smile, who isn't afraid of death? Being able to live well, of course no one wants to die. Tell me about the situation here. We don't have any enmity, anyway, so it's not like I can't spare your life. Feng Weiqi sneered, and said, don't think that what you said just now was absolutely true. My son is the absolute saber sect's small saber king. If you don't believe, you can ask anyone. Ling Han stroked his chin, and said, normally, I only see spoiled brats brandishing their parents' banner to act violently. I never thought that I'd actually encounter someone who uses his son's name to act tyrannically. My outlook on life has really been refreshed. He knocked Feng Weiqi unconscious with a slap, and stored him inside the Black Tower, planning to properly interrogate him. This umbrella is so beautiful. Losing Feng Weiqi's control, that myriad sieve umbrella also fell from the sky, and was caught by Hellion Sun Shui. This girl played with it fondly. Ling Han moved closer, and couldn't help but frown, and said, this doesn't seem to be the original, but an imitation. The handle and leaves of the umbrella were engraved with complicated vein-like patterns. However, the markings were very new and did not look like an ancient object at all. If this spiritual weapon was newly made, then there would be more than one. Moreover, these materials were only of the 6th rank. If there were still 7th or 8th rank materials, then wouldn't it be possible to make an even stronger myriad sifting umbrella? This Feng Weiqi needs to be interrogated properly. Ling Han and Hunyo entered the Black Tower, and Hellion Sun Shui could only sulk. Tell me everything about this cave in full detail, Ling Han said calmly to Feng Weiqi. That's just wishful thinking. Feng Weiqi looked very carefree, but there was still fear in his eyes. He had suddenly come to this strange place from the underground cavern. This was beyond common sense, and he could not help but feel fear. Has he been unconscious for days? Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, here, no one can say no to me, and you are obviously not an exception. I have plenty of ways to torment you, and it's up to you how long you can persist. Bring it on. If I say a soft word, I'll be your grandson. Feng Weiqi said with his head held high. Half a day later. I'll tell you everything. Feng Weiqi screamed. In this half a day, he suffered all kinds of unimaginable tortures, such as burning, drowning, burying, making him die and live again, live and die again. It was truly a life worse than death, and he couldn't die even if he wanted to. He only wanted to be freed now. You're really Small Saber King's father? Ling Han asked. Yes, I'm really his father, Feng Weiqi said, panting. His eyes were already unfocused, as if he'd become stupid. Why did you come here? Ling Han asked. When my son was exploring ancient sites, he found clues about this place. He came here first and obtained some ancient objects, Feng Weiqi answered. But my son had to concentrate on cultivation, so I came here to preside over the excavation project. What exactly is this place? I'm not very clear either. I only know that this belongs to an ancient dynasty from several tens of thousands of years ago, Feng Weiqi said. However, his following words made Ling Han's heart tremble. That ancient dynasty wanted to split open the skies and let the entire vast lands ascend into the realm of gods, but failed. This is only a treasury of that ancient dynasty's years ago. Split open the skies again. Ling Han was shocked. That ancient dynasty was truly bold, wanting to raise the entire continent into the realm of gods and let mortals become citizens of gods. Just thinking about it made one's scalp tingle. Tell me, how many treasures have you dug out here? Feng Weiqi explained one by one, and as Ling Han listened, he became more and more shocked. Most of the things here were puppets. Other than gold, silver, and iron, there was also a type of diamond puppet, but there was only one, long since taken by Small Saber King. If this kind of puppet unleashed its full power, it would be equivalent to a deity transformation tier elite, and more terrifyingly, it still had considerable intelligence. Additionally, the gold, silver, and iron puppets were far more than what Ling Han found, all taken by Small Saber King. As for what he wanted to do, Feng Weiqi didn't know either. He was only mining this ancient site for his son. Other than puppets, there were also the battleships Ling Han saw before, which were only divided into gold and black. The black battleships could threaten flower blossom tier warriors, and there were as many as 100 of them, while the gold battleships could kill spiritual infant tier warriors. There were only 10 of them, and only one was left here. The others were all in Small Saber King's hands. Fortunately, this gold battleship wasn't by Feng Weiqi's side, or else Ling Han wouldn't have been able to take down Feng Weiqi so easily, and would instead be hunted down. Not only was the gold battleship more powerful, it was also a flying-type treasured tool. It wasn't more than 10 meters long, and its flying speed was extremely fast, but it also consumed a lot of origin crystals. This Blackwood Island was also impregnable, so Feng Weiqi never thought that he would need to use this large-scale spirit tool. Aside from this, there were all kinds of practical spirit tools, such as the Myriad Treasures umbrella. This was indeed an imitation because the real one was already damaged, but it could still prevent deity transformation tier warriors from sensing spiritual qi, which was extremely terrifying. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh. How powerful was this ancient dynasty back then? This was only one of its treasure troves, but the various treasures excavated already made him shocked. However, the most important thing was still that obelisk. It was said that it involved a mystical power, and after 3 years, only this obelisk hadn't been excavated. The power of lightning was too terrifying, greatly affecting the progress of the project. From the information Small Saber King obtained, that ancient dynasty had a total of 4 mystical powers, sealed separately in 4 treasure troves. The mystical power here was called Thunderclap Ninth Heaven, the weakest of the 4 mystical powers, and the strongest mystical power was called Nine Deaths Heaven Art, which had the effect of reversing life and death. Small Saber King was very concerned about this mystical power, and would ask about the excavation progress of the obelisk every once in a while. If it weren't for his rather special identity, he actually wanted to personally oversee it. This time, I've gotten lucky, Ling Han said. Chapter 597. Ling Han exited the Black Tower and arrived in front of the obelisk. The workers had long since fled in fright, and now the place was empty. Han, you're ignoring me again. Hellion Sun Shui said with a tearful face, appearing extremely wronged. Ling Han was speechless. This Hai Niu was aggressive, condescending, and extremely domineering at first. But now, she actually looked like a punching bag. The contrast was too great, and he couldn't get used to it. And facing such a hellion Sun Shui, it made it very difficult for him to connect her with the domineering princess from before, and to feel killing intent towards her. This is also a mess. Ling Han sighed. He really didn't know how the two would end things after hellion Sun Shui recovered her memories. Hellion Sun Shui pulled on the corner of Ling Han's clothes, a satisfied smile appearing on her pretty face. She was now a little woman, asking for too little. No one to dig, so I can only do it myself, Ling Han said. He wasn't the kind of person who liked to enslave people. Since all the workers ran away, he wouldn't capture those people back to continue working. Hunyo also appeared. The little girl's claws were extremely sharp, and there was nothing better than digging with her claws. The workers from before didn't dare to get too close and dug 30 meters away, forming a deep pit. Feng Wei Qi shot out saber Qi with the blood saber, cutting from afar and chopping off the stones on the obelisk, so the progress was extremely slow. Ling Han strode forward, and the obelisk seemed to come alive. Flashes of lightning interweaved, and suddenly, a bolt of lightning struck out, blasting on Ling Han's body. Ling Han was instantly sent flying. Black smoke rose from his body, and his skin and flesh were actually slightly charred. Truly terrifying. His physique was 6th-tier rare metal, yet it was actually charred in one strike. The power of this lightning couldn't be underestimated. With a thought from Ling Han, the thunder battle armor immediately activated. What would be the result of fighting lightning with lightning? He advanced once again. Another bolt of lightning shot over. This time, the thunder battle armor activated its might and blocked this bolt of lightning. The bolts of lightning interweaved, forming a dense white electric current. The scene was extremely astonishing. The thunder battle armor seemed to have come to life on its own, fighting with the obelisk. Its power had already surpassed the limits of what Ling Han could unleash. The entire cave was filled with lightning. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The electric currents were like whips, whipping the mountain and leaving deep marks. The entire cave was shaking as if it was about to collapse. It's fun. Hunyo cheered, and also pounced over. Go back. Ling Han hurriedly called out. He was only able to withstand the power of the lightning because of the thunder battle armor. Otherwise, he would definitely have entered into the Black Tower at the first instant. Though the little girl was freakish, she should not be able to withstand this kind of power of lightning. Unexpectedly, Hunyo was actually unfazed in the lightning. Not only that, she seemed to have become the center of the lightning, and her body became a bottomless pit as endless lightning was absorbed by her. Ling Han, Nyo feels so strange. Hunyo said. In her eyes, there were strange scenes in chaos. There were the shattering of stars, the death of elites, exuding endless vicissitudes, and also endless pressure. Hellion Sun Shui shivered. Even if she was in fact a heaven-tier elite, she could not withstand this pressure. With a paw, she sat on the ground, cold sweat pouring like rain. Ling Han also almost knelt down, but the Black Tower lightly vibrated in his dantian and emitted a supreme presence, expelling Hunyo's pressure and making him return to normal. Hunyo, quickly retreat. Ling Han already knew that the lightning couldn't harm Hunyo, but her transformation was also very strange. Moreover, he had been secretly worried that Hunyo's human-shaped spirit base would revive and replace Hunyo. BZZT BZZT BZZT, the steel and the thunder battle armor released a brilliant light, the veined patterns on them disintegrating continuously. In an instant, all of the lightning had disappeared, and the entire cave became pitch black. The torches had long since been extinguished by the lightning. In the darkness, Hunyo's entire body shone, emitting a shocking presence. At this moment, she was no longer a gluttonous little girl, but seemed to have transformed into a supreme being that could shatter the heavens and pierce through the 9 underworlds. If it weren't for Ling Han having the support of the Black Tower, he would definitely be lying on the ground now, without even the strength to snap a finger. Hellion Sun Shui knew, and had already shrunk into a ball, unable to even raise her head. Pa! The thunder battle armor on Ling Han's body shattered, turning into decay. The essence in the battle armor was actually sucked clean, turning a 10th tier material into scrap metal. The obelisk also seemed to be heavily damaged, and the power of lightning became extremely weak. Hunyo fell onto the ground with a paw, and fainted. Ling Han hurriedly ran over, picked up the little girl, and checked her aura. Fortunately, she was only unconscious, and the various functions of her body weren't damaged in the slightest. What exactly was this little girl's background? Ling Han sighed, put away the curiosity in his heart, and stored the little girl into the Black Tower. Hellion Sun Shui stood up, her eyes appearing to be a bit dazed, and her whole person was also a bit dazed as she walked towards the obelisk. Her mind was a bit unclear now, and she stretched out a slender hand to press on the body of the obelisk that was exposed outside the stone. You also went crazy. Ling Han hurriedly leaped over, wanting to pull her back, but the strength of this girl's physical body was also extremely terrifying, and he actually couldn't pull her back. Hellion Sun Shui's hand had already pressed on the obelisk, and instantly, Ling Han felt a vast wave of memories rush over, forming a spectacular scene in front of him. A martial artist turned into lightning, fighting fiercely in the sky. He was truly powerful. When receiving an attack, his body turned into lightning to dodge the attack, and when his fist struck, the power of lightning erupted, destroying everything. Thunderclap Ninth Heaven, mystical power. Originally, this mystical power was protected by the power of lightning, and definitely couldn't be so easily learned, but the thunder battle armor and the obelisk formed a miraculous interaction, and with Hunyo's intrusion, absorbing a large amount of the power of lightning, the obelisk also lost its protection, easily inheriting the mystical power. One character after another shone in Ling Han's mind. He was now hugging Hellion Sun Shui, so the inheritance of the Thunderclap Ninth Heaven also fell onto the two of them at the same time. Body turned into lightning, destroying the world. Z, the remaining power of lightning interweaved on their bodies, turning the clothes on their bodies into flying ash. The two's limbs entwined, fusing into one. Under the impact of this mystical power's memories, Ling Han also became dazed, as if he had a strange dream and became a dragon rider, wanting to subdue a restless dragon, entangling and tearing at it. In the end, he obviously won. Riding on the dragon, galloping freely, it was very satisfying. In a daze, he fainted due to exhaustion, and only the endless lightning turned into lightning symbols in his mind, which was the true meaning of the Thunderclap Ninth Heaven. Chapter 598. When Ling Han woke up, he felt refreshed. He crawled up, and couldn't help but make a slight sound of surprise. He discovered that there wasn't a single thread of clothing on his body, and hurriedly took out clothes from the Black Tower to put them on. He remembered that under the interweaving of lightning, the clothes on his body were indeed torn. After all, the thunder battle armor was destroyed. He couldn't help but sigh inwardly. That was a level 10 spirit tool, and though it was damaged, it was still an incredible treasure. Huh, where's Hainyo? Ling Han's eyes swept over, but that doormat, little wife, was nowhere to be seen. Strange, didn't this woman stick to him all day, and there was actually a time when she disappeared. Where did she run off to? Ling Han summoned Hunyo and Zhu Xian from the Black Tower. The little girl was certainly a freak, waking up after sleeping for a while, and being carefree as if nothing had happened. Hunyo, do you feel anything different? Ling Han asked. Hunyo tilted her head and thought for a while, then said, Nyo knows this now. She raised her right hand, and a bolt of lightning shot out, turning into an arc of electricity that shot out. Pa! A large hole instantly appeared on the opposite mountain wall. Thunderclap Ninth Heaven. Ling Han was astounded. He only received the inheritance of this mystical power, but the little girl could actually use it. Never mind, the little girl was very strange, as long as she was fine. Ling Han once again went to the obelisk, but discovered that this obelisk had already been broken into more than a dozen pieces, and the symbols on it had also dimmed and blurred. He pressed his hand on it, but the broken stone immediately shattered, turning into fragments. The inheritance was already gone, obtained by him and Hellion Sun Shui, and the others had no fate with this strange technique. If Ling Han wanted to teach it to others, he could only do so after he had cultivated this mystical power to the level of great accomplishment, and used his great power to engrave the mystical power onto it. At present, he was completely unable to replicate this mystical power, because he did not have the mnemonic and diagram at all. What he had obtained was the purest Tao technique. Strange, why hasn't that Hainyo returned yet? Ling Han muttered to himself. He raised his voice and called out for a while, but the echo did not stop. However, the woman did not appear. The three of them searched, but couldn't find her. This result made Hunyo very happy, because she had never gained the upper hand in the fight with Hellion Sun Shui. Now that this woman had disappeared, she obviously couldn't wait to clap her hands. He didn't find Hellion Shui, but he did find the golden warship. It was unknown what material it was made of. It was only 10 meters long and less than 10 meters wide. There was actually an exquisite cabin inside. Rather than calling it a warship, it was better to call it a simple moving imperial residence. There was indeed an origin crystal cannon installed on it. It could compress the energy within the origin crystal and fire it out. Its destructive power was astonishing. However, it also burned a lot of origin crystals. Whatever level of origin crystal was put in, the attack would be of the same level, but the upper limit was the spiritual infant tier. After pondering for a while, Ling Han quickly figured out how to use this battleship. By injecting his divine sense into a crystal on the bow of the ship, he could freely control it and use the power of the crystal to navigate and fly in the air. Good stuff, but it burns a lot of origin crystals. Ling Han nodded. With this thing, he wouldn't need a carriage when going out, and the speed was very fast. Destroying a thunder battle armor in exchange for a mystical power and this treasured tool, so it's not a loss, Ling Han said. However, he still felt that it was a bit of a pity. The thunder battle armor was quite useful. Did that silly girl run away by herself? The three of them exited the cave and searched again, but still couldn't find any trace of Hellion Sun Shui. Stay here for 3 days, and if we still don't see that silly girl, we'll leave. Ling Han made a decision. These 3 days obviously couldn't be wasted. Ling Han began to cultivate the thunderclap ninth heaven. Countless symbols flowed in his mind, transforming into his comprehension, but couldn't be expressed in words, surpassing this level. Thus, the inheritance of mystical powers wasn't through words, but in various forms. For example, the Eye of Truth was an eyeball, the annihilating dragon star arrow was a statue, and the thunderclap ninth heaven was an obelisk. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Ling Han raised his right hand, and there was a flash of lightning, sizzling. Unfortunately, I don't have the thunder spirit vein. Otherwise, combined with the thunderclap ninth heaven, the power could be even stronger. Ling Han shook his head and sighed. This mystical power was really impressive. He could only be said to have a superficial understanding of it, and could only shoot out lightning. And after cultivating it to a certain level, he could turn his body into lightning. Not only could he avoid the direct impact of power, his speed would also be ridiculously fast. Not all attacks could be avoided, but only pure power, because no matter how strong the power was, it was impossible to injure lightning. But fire, ice, and other elemental attacks could still pose a threat to the body of lightning. As for what kind of damage it could cause, that would depend on the battle power of both sides. Losing the thunder battle armor, but gaining the body of lightning. In the short term, it's naturally a loss, but in the long term, it's a huge gain. After all, the armor is an external object, and it's already damaged, so it's impossible to unleash the strongest power. However, I still have a long way to go before I can turn my body into lightning. Ling Han shook his head and stood up. 3 days had passed, but there was still no trace of Hellion Sun Shui, as if she had really disappeared. Strange, could it be that this silly girl has regained her memory? Ling Han muttered. That can't be right. If she regained her memory, she wouldn't have let me go like this. Other things aside, she definitely knows that I have a treasure on me that can contain living things. Also, she doesn't want the vial of curses anymore. Strange, the silly girl's mentality is indeed different from others. It can't be speculated with common sense. The world was too big. If a person really wanted to disappear, how could they be found? Ling Han could also conclude that at that time, he and Hellion Sun Shui were together, and they received the mystical power inheritance together.
After that, after receiving a large amount of memories, they fainted together. It should be Hellion Sun Shui who woke up first, but this girl chose to leave. If there was an enemy, shouldn't she have killed him along the way? Forget it, never mind. It's an enemy anyway, so it's better if she left. Ling Han muttered to himself. However, people had feelings, and after being together for such a long time, he really wasn't used to suddenly losing someone who tugged on the corner of his clothes all day long. They sat on the golden ship, and after Ling Han steered, it immediately floated up and flew at an extremely fast speed. From the outside, this was a streamlined entity, but from the inside of the cabin, it was transparent, and the field of vision wasn't affected at all. It was very magical. This made the three curious for a while, but they soon calmed down. Those who should sleep slept, and those who should eat ate. Such a big snake. Hunyo suddenly clapped her hands. Ling Han turned his head, and saw a colossus suddenly rise from the bottom of the lake. The exposed part was like a hill, terrifyingly large, and even if they were inside the ship, Ling Han still felt a terrifying pressure. Zhu Xian'er simply leaned into his embrace, weak and powerless. That 1,000-year-old flood dragon, run, this big guy isn't in the heaven tier, and probably already advanced into the shattering void tier. Ling Han hurriedly accelerated the ship.
Chapter 599. Bloodworm, Hellion Xuanxue and Xian Yukai both exclaimed in shock. Though they had never entered into the ghostly dragon cave before, they had gone through who knew how much information about this place. Because they had at least one chance to enter into this place, they naturally had to have a good understanding of the situation. Bloodworm was a special life form that was born from the blood of an alternative dragon after its death. It was born because of the alternative dragon, but it was also inseparable from the alternative dragon, and would be restricted to the body of the alternative dragon for its entire life. However, this kind of life form was extremely powerful. After all, it was born from the river of blood, so no matter what, it must have absorbed some of the blood of the alternative dragon. The bloodworm opened its round, sharp mouth, and bit towards Ling Han. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "In the river, I would still give you some leeway, and now that we're out of the water, you still want to be domineering?" His sword slashed out, and blood splattered everywhere. This bloodworm was instantly sliced open from head to tail by him. Its internal organs spilled onto the surface of the river, and it was incredibly stinky. So strong. Xian Yukai couldn't help but be speechless. She had long heard of the fierce reputation of the bloodworm, but it had actually been insta-killed by a single slash from Ling Han. Was Ling Han too strong, or were the rumors wrong, and the bloodworm was actually not very powerful? Ling Han's figure turned, and he landed on the shore. "Are you all right?" Hellion Xuanxue came up to him, and asked. Ling Han shook his head, and said, "I'm fine. There is the power of regulations in this river of blood, and the corrosive power varies according to one's cultivation level. You know, my physique is one tier higher than my cultivation level. Helian Xuanxue instantly came to a realization. No wonder everyone who fell into the river would be corroded at about the same speed. That was because the majority of them were of true dragon bloodline, and had cultivated their physique to the level of rare metal of the same level. Thus, the degree of corrosion they received was naturally about the same. However, Ling Han's physique was a tier higher than his cultivation level. Thus, though he would also be corroded, the speed was far slower than that of the king tier of the sea race. In comparison, he was actually the true king tier. Hey, where's the dragon's blood grass? Xian Yu Kai asked from afar. She just couldn't stand Ling Han's smug look, and always wanted to give him a blow. You are indeed very impressive to be able to kill the bloodworm, but didn't you say you found the dragon's blood grass just now? Where is it now? What business is it of yours? Helian Xuanxue glared at him, and Hun Yo was seething with killing intent. Why not just eat dragon stew? Ling Han ignored this little princess who thought herself infallible. His right hand shook, making Helian Xuanxue touch it, and then he withdrew it. Helian Xuanxue's beautiful eyes instantly lit up. Dragon's blood grass. True enough, dragon's blood grass also grew at the bottom of the river, and judging from the current situation, only Ling Han alone could harvest it. What did this mean? Innumerable amounts of dragon's blood grass were currently waving at them. Putting aside the fact that it was enough for her son to build a foundation, even she and Ling Han could obtain it. For this kind of thing, it was better to make a fortune in silence. There was no need to let Xian Yu Kai know. And when she saw that Ling Han could not produce the dragon's blood grass, Xian Yu Kai was even more disdainful. She was certain that Ling Han was a swindler, and it was only because Helian Xuanxue was stupid that she was deceived into believing him without a doubt. Meanwhile, Ling Han communicated with Small Tower, wanting to know if the dragon's blood grass could be planted in the Black Tower. After obtaining a positive answer, he could not help but be overjoyed, but very soon, he was disappointed, because the Black Tower could only accelerate the growth of the dragon's blood grass, but was unable to nurture seeds. That was because this thing did not bear seeds at all, and was completely born because of the alternative dragon, so it could only be nurtured here. If it didn't bear seeds, then so be it. 3 leaves becoming 4 leaves, or even 5 or 6 leaves would also be good. The increase in effect was equivalent to planting a few more stalks. As they walked, Ling Han activated the Eye of Truth, searching for the dragon's blood grass at the bottom of the river. This was nurtured by the blood of the true dragon, and it was precisely the case of coming out of the mud to be dyed, dispelling the harm of the corrosive blood, leaving only the effect of tempering the physique and increasing power. Where dragon's blood grass grew, there would basically be bloodworms standing guard, so there was naturally no lack of battles. These bloodworms were all in the heaven tier, and some had even reached battle prowess above 10 stars of the heaven tier. Even Ling Han would have to use his full battle prowess to be able to kill them. In 3 days, they had already harvested over 100 stalks of dragon's blood grass, which made Helian Sun Shui incredibly excited. One had to know that in previous years, the amount of dragon's blood grass collected by a whole race might not even reach this amount. Who asked only Ling Han to be able to enter the river? Yet Xian Yu Kai was speechless. This human put on a show again and again, but returned empty-handed every time. After so many times, Helian Sun Shui actually still believed him. It was practically inconceivable. The aloofness and nobility of a ruler of the sea race had all been thrown to the ends of the sky by you. The space in the first layer of the ghostly dragon cave was extraordinarily large. When it came to the 4th day, multiple rivers of blood gathered from various places, forming a super large lake that was like an ocean. And in the center of this lake, there was a small island, and on the island was a tower-shaped white object. It was said that this was a passageway that could lead to the 2nd layer. After arriving here, they would have to think of a way to cross the lake. Otherwise, if they could not reach the small island, how could they proceed to the 2nd layer? Someone was already crossing the lake. After so many years, the three great royal clans had long since come up with a countermeasure, and discovered that the carrier made from the bones of the rulers of the sea race could resist the corrosion of the river water for a very long time. These bones were naturally left behind by the elites of the sea race that had already passed away. Their skulls would be buried in the ancestral shrine, but the other bones would be left behind. Not only would they be used to cross this place, but the bones of shattering void tier elites could also be made into spirit tools that had immense power. Previously, everyone had been randomly sent to the ends of various blood vessels, but now they were all gathered together. Ling Han arrived at Su Xiu, Ran and the others. They were currently sitting on a bone boat, and were crossing towards the lake island. In the process of crossing, the bone boat was also continuously corroding. Probably, it would just barely be able to sail to the lake island, and it was more or less about to completely fall apart. Hellion Sun Shui also drew out a bone boat from her spatial vessel. Since they had come here, they naturally would not be unprepared. This bone boat was very small, and looked like it could only accommodate 5 people. However, if 3 people sat on it, it would appear to be considerably spacious. Xian Yukai humphed, and also drew out a bone boat. Her status was relatively high, and she had her own bone boat by herself, unlike the others who still had to cross together with others. She followed closely behind Ling Han and the others, holding her breath and wanting to see how Ling Han would be defeated. As Ling Han rowed, he looked at the bottom of the lake. Suddenly, he exclaimed in surprise, and said, "We've struck it rich. There's dragon's blood grass again." Hellion Sun Shui exclaimed in pleasant surprise. "Not only is there dragon's blood grass, it's even a 4-leaf one." Ling Han said smilingly. This time, Hellion Sun Shui could no longer remain calm. Even if it was just an extra leaf, the effect was worlds apart. Ling Han did not immediately enter the water. Instead, he looked at the bottom of the lake, and said, "However, there's a big guy guarding this dragon's blood grass." At the side of the dragon's blood grass, there was shockingly a bloodworm that was as long as 30 meters. Even separated by layers of lake water, he could still sense how terrifying this large worm was. Shattering Void Tier, it was definitely in the Shattering Void Tier. Otherwise, how could there possibly be such pressure? If it's too dangerous, it's better not to take the risk, Hellion Sun Shui advised. Spirit medicine was admittedly good, but how could it be more important than one's life? Ling Han nodded, and said, "I'll set up a formation to blast it to death." He leaped into the lake water, and the ice dragon ground blast formation was already set up, following him as he dove towards the bottom of the lake. However, Ling Han immediately discovered that the corrosive ability of the lake water was obviously a level stronger. Even if he possessed a physique that was a whole level higher than his cultivation level, he still felt the pressure, and his skin had already begun to rot. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.